Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Aurora. This is December 13th, 2023. And ordinarily, I would be doing level 2, lesson 15. This is lessons for full spectrum humans. I walk on a treadmill during class now. And that is the one about cancer as an interdimensional visitor. And YouTube has removed my previous semester's sharings and lectures. So I will not be doing that topic. The fun, happy little topic of cancer. So if you want to find that, I actually uploaded it separately on my Patreon, where I do not face these challenges and can speak much more freely. So today, what we're doing here is level 1, lesson 16, that is the death journey. And I didn't want to be repetitive. I actually went over this and was just reviewing this right now. I looked into it last night because I've been talking about like what it is to be an ascended master, what is the flow of energy around this particular shape. Maybe I should grab my other one because the colors do not show up on the screen very effectively. This one I think shows up more effectively. Have done over the past couple of weeks a lot of focus on this shape and a lot of review and talking about what the membrane of death is. And I really want to talk a lot about Flying Rainbow Lasagne and what it is and how it is performed or embodied or experienced. And I'm going to tie in a lot of lasagna teaching, although that's not necessarily part of this lesson. I want to do it. I was thinking maybe I should just ditch lesson 16 and just go full on lasagna. I might diverge from my notes. So I did send out my notes with the email last night. Hi, welcome. So these people are tuning in. And what I want to do is stop in the midst of going through the notes for lesson 16 and talk a little bit about my experience, my journey, what creating Flying Rainbow Lasagne was like in the moment, and also open up the floor to some Ask Me Anything questions. I thought I might do an entire Ask Me Anything because I find that I benefit a lot from the questions of this beautiful group of people that I'm sharing my journey with, because I do two things. Clearly, I'm an abstract teacher, just sharing information without adding a lot of my own flavor to it. And also, I have my own life experience, my own sense of personhood, my own emotional landscape. And there's a lot, I think there's a lot to be gained from sharing that too. That's different than sharing empirical information. So my empirical information and professorial self is like 1 + 1 = 2. And this is the truth of the cosmos. Then I have other aspects of my journey that I can share, especially as it relates to death. And so I'll be doing a blending today. I'm going to talk about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I'm going to talk about the Bardo Todal, pardon my pronunciation on that. The first one is the Egyptian, formerly translated as Book of the Dead, currently rectified as Book of Coming Forth into Day. And the other one is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And these are both handbooks for dying that are read by the living. But I want you to comprehend that since the invention and creation and embodiment of Flying Rainbow Lasagne, you have another option other than the conventional death. And death also, even though, also, pardon me, as I'm making funny faces here, I often am very lighthearted in the way that I do my presentations, even about deep topics, even about distressing topics. So I know people might have had deaths in their life or a lot of grief and sadness. Please never be insulted. I'm never making fun of you or your grief or anything, even if I'm lighthearted in some of my sharings about death. And also sometimes humor helps to be able to even approach and talk about and look at things that are difficult topics. So if you are grieving, if you've experienced death, if you're in a process of having a family member almost on the verge of death, my heart goes out to you, and please don't take my lightheartedness in an insulting way. Thank you. And thank you for also just allowing me my free expression. Okay, all of that now moving aside, let's talk about what is death. Death is a focuser of your consciousness, far from the anthropomorphic description of death being like kind of a scary monster, something that has a knife that will cut off your head, or something that's like continually hunting you down, the Grim Reaper, right? That this is really an impersonal force. That is a flow of energy that flows along here where my pen is flowing. And that's an arc that is part of a much larger circle that emanates from this source, which is also the destination, outward into reality and circulates back, and is part of a cohesive whole of many multiple realities. So it is a stream of energy, and it is related to the experience of unconditional love, like a fire hose of love, a fire hose of information that is flowing through those areas. And it is a positive, healthy flow of energy that signifies health in the cosmos. So this thing here, that is a flowing membrane of death, this little arc along the edge of that vortex that you would experience in a great deal of inconvenience at the end of your life, is part of a much, much larger whole of a comprehensive energy circuit that doesn't just flow in one figure eight here in one chakra system, but is part of a much, much larger, just like I have printed on my fabric, a larger matrix, or a better word is continuum, just because no one made a movie called The Continuum that was about imprisoning consciousness, but a much, much larger continuum of energy that is flowing. And we want that energy to be flowing. That energy flowing is analogous to the blood that is flowing in your veins and arteries, and how that signifies health. In this case, it is an abstract energy that is flowing through the continuum of time, and it evidences the healthy state of time itself. You do not want arterial blockages or lymphatic blockages in the flow of information and energy and consciousness in the abstract map of time. And that is exactly what we have in this class. We talk about it and call them putis, those pesky occupiers of the interstices that are analogous to arterial blockages or undigested emotional experiences that are destabilizing the entirety of the time structure in exactly the same way that, let's say, an aortal blockage of a fatty deposit in your own body would destabilize the health and vitality and longevity and coherence of your whole entirety, your holistic presence as an organism. That would be enough to be able to end your life. So let's also talk a little bit about the cultural paradigm. So wait, let's first, this is not part of my notes, but let's first go back to ancient concurrent Atlantis, a time before death was invented. And that does not mean that the membrane didn't exist. The membrane over here existed, but no one explored that membrane. So imagine having like a highway that nobody ever drove on. It was that level of clearness. And I wouldn't say nothing was there. My words are having trouble here. Consciousness did not occupy this area. So I say a highway that nobody drove on. The highway was completely clear, and only energy flowed upon that highway. No consciousness explored that highway. So this is very, very big stuff. I want you to really consider this. Death as an artifice, something that is not natural. Death as something that is actually relatively new in terms of your consciousness experience and what is happening in where you go and where you flow through time. It wasn't always that way. It's been that way for a while. Everyone has here in this world has normalized to it and looks at it as an inevitability and looks at it as if it is part of the brochure and the original intention for how experience here is supposed to be, but it is not at all part of the original intention for how the experience here is supposed to be. Death, the experience of you and mortality and going on to the membrane of death is an aberration. So the membrane itself is supposed to be there. It is supposed to be full of flowing energy. And the blockages that are there are aberrations. And the blockages that are there actually precede your species, humanity, and all of the organisms here experience of interacting with the membrane. Otherwise, the membrane would just be a thing that's there that you never actually interact with. You'd be incredibly focused on your timeline of immortality, and all of the timelines that end on the membrane of death would be peripheral realities. Reality that would be classified as might be or could have been, but never was. And that's a very, very different quality of experience than what you presently have. So in that level of reality, everyone ascended, everyone avoided interaction with the membrane of death, everyone was their true self all throughout life, and everyone made it to the final culmination, the return home, the reconnection with the destination, which is remembrance of God's self and returning to the source that emanated you. I'm making that little motion with my hands because I'm trying to signify this little point right here. And then there was a time when death was invented, and that all of this is signified. So now, so ancient concurrent Atlantis, what was the experience like? You came into being, you came into physical reality. You had many, many wonderful adventures, lived in a state of total health and divine connection and self-knowledge and connection to all the other organisms in the world. You were connected and remain connected there in a way that is almost unimaginable here, especially with the invasion of the sky pollutants and artificial architecture that I talked about last week so extensively, that stuff really, really diminishes energetic communication between and connection between yourself and other living organisms. But in ancient or concurrent Atlantis, it was a time of total connectedness in terms of consciousness and organisms. Nobody died and everybody was connected, and everybody was overtly and consciously connected throughout your whole entire life. It was a very, very different quality of existence. Let me just drink a little bit of water here. And so I want to talk about, I want to give a scholarly presentation about the Egyptian book of coming forth into day. So from your perspective, Atlantis is in the past. And when that happened, it was a fragmentation of the culture and an amnesia of the experience. And the fragments and vestigial traces of the wisdom of that time were broken up into various different puzzle pieces or shards that became the basis for much of what you know as ancient human civilization. That would be like the empires of Asia. So that would be Tibet and the Hindu Empire, where they know about the chakras, they know about chi or prana, the ephemeral life force energy, and other aspects of how to navigate death. But before, death was not a thing that we did. So the science or practice of observing death and then figuring out how to navigate death is something that has been cultivated within what is known as your human history. But the vestigial traces of Atlantis don't only reside in Asia, they also reside in the Middle East, in Egypt, and in the teachings of Egypt. They also exist in Mesoamerica, which is like the teachings of the ancient Mayan, and even civilizations that predate the Maya, and even, yes, into indigenous traditions of North America and indigenous traditions of Australia. Puzzle pieces spread out, shards spread out. Everybody held a piece of truth, but nobody had the entirety of the truth. And then now, in this time that we are experiencing all of these mystery schools, all of these safeguarded, kind of like a trust fund of information, it's all being released. It's like, yes, you have achieved the moment when the safe deposit box, the key is given to you and you're able to open it up and find all of these amazing treasures, because now is the time when it is really required to be able to experience those things. So in my notes from 10 years ago, and this remains relevant still today, I give a brief critique about your current culture that you are embedded within or submerged within. I call it, industrialized culture, and it also is largely technology based. And here in this time place, I have to contrast it with either, ancient Egypt or Asia or Atlantis, all of these different places. The focus of your existence was, in those times, not about your material or mundane existence. It was really about where you were going as an end result of the personal growth and self-cultivation that you experienced while being here and while being embodied. So sometimes I joke about this, existential questions. Mommy, daddy, why am I here? And the answer is because you are here to get accumulated wisdom, or to accrete light. Light is information, and it is data, and it is intelligence. And the more that you are here as a soul, meaning a continuum, a consciousness that is aware of its story on your journey, like who you are, where you've been, where you are right now, where you're going, as a soul beyond the physical container that you're in right now, to learn more. You're here to learn and not to have amnesia mind wipes like magic eraser. Who am I? What am I forgot. Try it all again. No, you are here in order to absorb layers or accrue layers, which is what accrete is, gather together, critical, both emotional wisdom, emotional intelligence, and soul intelligence of all of the things that you've been through. So ancient Egypt. And Egypt has been through many, many different periods, and actually is much, much older and more ancient than your present archaeological assessment allows for, because there are many cognitive dissonances where your present Earth surface civilization simply cannot recognize or acknowledge how long things have been going on. And also you recognize from what I'm saying to you that you have different valid layers that are concurrent of reality that you are all experiencing at the same time. I know, because basically the answer is time language becomes very complex. So please comprehend that Egypt has transformed and had many different regimes of many different flavors, some of which were much more pristine, some of which were highly distorted. And I bring this up in the sense of like mummification and this basically the search for eternal life. Oh, God, it's been 20 minutes of me talking here, and I'm finally getting around to the meat and potatoes. This teaching today is about the search for eternal life, all right? In ancient concurrent Atlantis, there was not really a search. It was kind of just like right there on the plate for you. It's like, here is eternal life. Like you were in existence. Now you're in existence in a body. You are alive in this body, and you will continue to be in existence. And it was something that was never really in question before the distortion of this reality system that you presently inhabit, and before the many, many genetic degradations of the body. The question of eternal life was simply a no-brainer. It's like, well, duh, of course I've got eternal life, right? As I'm being very facetious and lighthearted here. But in this world that you're in right now you're in the world of mortality. You come from a layer of reality. Your mind and your consciousness and your being emanates from a layer of reality where you are immortal, where you have never died, and where death is not even a thing. And then you are here in this world. You could think of it as being incepted into a dream. You're in a shell, an inner shell, the gobstopper of reality. And in this layer of reality, you face mortality, not only of yourself, but of your loved ones and of plants and animals. In this layer of reality, death is normative. That means like, yep, trees are going to grow, plant the seed, tree will grow, the tree will die. And it happens for trees, and it happens for butterflies, and it happens for microbes, and it'll happen for you. No, I'm joking now, obviously, because I don't want to reinforce that program. So I want to talk about the different types of exit, the different ways to navigate this structure and the different ways to exit this structure. And this structure was never meant to be something that was an imprisonment, and it is meant to be part of a larger, again, continuum of time structures that is a perpetual motion machine in a very, very positive way. And I have to say this because I've come into this world and I'm like, hooray, I'm alive. I get to like learn about the grocery store and washing machines and all sorts of stuff. And everyone else who's been here for a long time already, they're all like melting. They're like, Aurora, we've been here for so long already. We've been through the reincarnation karmic washing machine over and over. We're threadbare. We're done. We're over it. Get us out of here. And I'm like, oh, I understand. You're like at the end of a marathon, and I'm like, I'm fresh. I'm like ready to run. I'm like, this is great. I'm feeling great. But in all truthfulness, life is not supposed to be a grim death march. Your experience of embodiment is supposed to be comfortable, joyful, fulfilling, uplifting, and energizing. And I recognize that through a system of profound injustice, that many of you have felt that you are trapped here. And also, when I have gone over this in the past couple of weeks, the flow of energy when you embody over here at the edge. So it's kind of like saying this: if this is the vector, but you don't start off with this in position like this, you start off with this in position like this. Why do we do that? Because you have ballast, because you have a bunch of heavy stuff that is destabilizing the washing machine that makes this be at this angle, and that you have to continually go through all of these wrong notes in order to be shifting your time map to be in alignment with this, which is what you really want to be in alignment. But you no longer have to explore every single wrong note on the piano and go through all of those death experiences in order to finally find the right note. Have my piano on. Wait, do I have my sound? I have to put the sound settings on here on. Wrong notes. Here, wait, we want to get to this note. But it's like wrong note, because here's where you're born. That's not the right note. You're dead. Not the right note. Still not right. Tried. Further. Keep going. Not right. And every single one of these is a death. You finally get to the note that you were supposed to be beginning the song of your life at that note. And why not begin there? Because of huge levels of injustice. And exploring all of those wrong notes, first of all, you must care about the versions of you that are on the membrane of death. That these are not mere abstractions, and it's not just merely like, oh yeah, sociopathically disassociated from all of that pain. That's all you. That's all you. And really, please care about that. It was not meant to happen, because this speaks to deep existential questions. Why would God allow this? Shaking your hand at the sky. Why would you let this happen? This is not fair. This is not right. And I profoundly agree. Much of what you are experiencing right now is not fair and is not right and is not the way it's supposed to be. So if you have had a death, if you're grieving recent or long scarred over, a lot of what people feel in grief is like, it's not fair. And you know something? I will validate that for you. It's not fair. It's actually not the way it is supposed to happen. And there are larger levels of injustice that have brought this into being. So if we look at, right now we're going into ancient Egypt, all right? So ancient that it really is remembered even in Egypt as a mythology before they became a civilization. The symbols of Isis, Osiris, and Horus and Set. These are symbols. They are described as if they are characters, like a person. Like Osiris is described as a person, but it is beyond a person. Osiris is the symbolic representation of the culture known as Atlantis. And in the mythology of ancient, uncorrupted Egypt, there was a guy who was red, who was very warlike, and who came from Mars, whose name was Set, all right? And Set is very close to Satan, and he was jealous of Osiris. And Osiris was married to Isis, and Set tried to destroy Osiris. This is the invention of death. Before, in the Egyptian mythology, before that activity happened, nobody ever died. Who invented death? Set. And what did he do? He dismembered Osiris, chopped him up into all sorts of pieces, the fragmentation of Atlantean culture, and was strewn about the planet. Body parts placed in all the different continents, recognizing that as like relics of wisdom left in all these different places. And the diminishment of consciousness and conscious creativity that resulted as a result of that. In the mythology, what ended up happening was Isis grieved so strongly. Isis brought back together all of the fragments. There were certain crucial body parts missing. They were manufactured. She brought him back to life with sex magic. And this is weird stuff. And then Osiris was not really alive. That's the whole point. He was alive when he was immortal. He was dead after being assaulted and dismembered, and then in being put back together and revivified through this, I shouldn't so flippantly call it sex magic, through the very, very profound love of his grieving widow, that she kind of imbued him with life and resuscitated him and brought him back together. But all the gods kind of looked around, they kind of looked it up and down and were like, you know, you're not really alive. We can't let you really be on Earth and be, you know, in life. We can't really let you be in life. And that's when Osiris became the Lord of the Dead. You got it? And in the ancient Egyptian mythology that grew out of that primary original myth that described symbolically larger cultural and consciousness, you know, whatever disturbances and perturbations, came this mythology of recognizing what is the sun bark. So in ancient Egypt, first of all, bark, B-A-R-Q-U-E, is a raft. It's one of those rafts that is kind of flat like this and then has curved, curly-cued edges, kind of like the edge of a violin. And that was a normal way for them to get around, and they got around on the Nile. So their topology of their world influenced their cosmology. Every season, the Nile would flood, and the Nile was the main way to be able to move things, people, goods, and you know, whatever, heavy stuff throughout their world. And when they looked up at the sky, they saw the Milky Way, and they saw what they presumed to be like a river in the sky, a Nile, that you had to go across, let's say, an ocean of consciousness. This is called the Duat, D-U-A-T. I can write these things down if you want to. It just slows me down a lot in my presentation. So crossing the Duat, this is the activity that the Egyptians trained for in life. So if you are an athlete, you know, you go to the gym, or you, like me, run on the treadmill. I run slow. And what are you doing? You are training for the day when you'll have to do something, like, you know, whatever, run a marathon or go someplace or do something. You build these muscles for a reason. The whole idea of being alive and embodied, mommy, daddy, why am I here, is to build these muscles. You build these spiritual muscles or consciousness muscles that, and you also create a structured value system and cosmology, a polygon of ideas. Polygon means multi-sided shape, and it can be curvilinear or it can have straight edges, but just consider something being a multi-sided complex shape that has to have tensile strength. That if you ever did one of those science classes where you had to like build a bridge out of toothpicks and then like see how many eggs it can hold, and if it's like, oh, you put one more egg on top of there, the whole entire thing breaks, because it's made out of matchsticks and there's a limit to that. But each one of your ideas is one of those matchsticks, or each one of your ideas is like a plank that makes the floor of your raft, your sunbark. And in ancient Egypt, and also in many of the cultures of Asia, everything about your life was focused on having a successful death, having a conscious death. So they didn't really speak that much about ascension or the transcendence of death. That is really what I am going to teach you about and tell you about and emphasize today in terms of Flying Rainbow Lasagne. They did, however, encourage people and give people the mystery school, the secret teachings that were held. They were held secretly because there's always been this consciousness suppression agenda and organization that's been going on pretty much, you know, throughout since the invasion, since Set dismembered Osiris. There have been a concerted efforts made. There have been concerted efforts made to keep you diminished and amnesiac and in the dark and disempowered, so that you cannot know where you are and navigate where you are effectively. So these were held as mystery traditions that only aspirants would be told about, and only after jumping over some hurdles and proving that you're worthy of that information. Again, at this time in human history, over the past 20 years, all bets are off. Eat as much as you want. Eat as much as you want at the all-you-can-eat buffet of information, because you need this. You need these calories. You are carbo loading for the ultimate soul marathon, which is Ascension. Can't see that painting because it's not very well lit in here, but which is, that painting is called The Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagne, and it signifies Earth transforming based upon this solar energy. So the ancient Egyptian cosmology was that the sun is alive, and that is directly analogous to what I teach to all of you, and it is a direct truth. The sun is alive, the sun is conscious. And in what I share non-mythologically, yes, the sun is alive, the sun is a portal, like a doorway, through which you can enter into this reality as particles of light and waveforms of light enter into this reality, and also through which you can exit this reality. Yes, you can. This is how experts do star travel. And so the ancient Egyptians mythologized this by looking at the solar disk. If this is where the sun rises on your screen, we're rising over here, and this is dawn, and then we get to here, and here is noon, and then we get to here, and then the sun is setting, and it's the end of the day. And that was seen to be a transit across waters. This is the boat that is going across, a boundary like the Nile. And who's on board this boat? Osiris. That's the whole point. So the Egyptian mythology was to have people cultivate themselves in life and to be guided as an aspirant, so that when you die, you have created your own raft out of cunningly joined together planks that are a set of ideas and values that will sustain your consciousness when you no longer have a physical form, so that you can make it to this sunbark, which is a collective. Osiris is not there alone. There's many, many, many immortals that travel on that vessel, on that boat, every day. And that was considered to be the goal and the culmination of everything that you're doing. So synopsis is, they deprioritized their daily life in that culture. It was not as important as what happens after death. Again, afterlife, or where you go after you die, that's a place that never even existed. When you, because Atlantis is the baseline of how you're supposed to live. Like, you didn't spend any amount of time thinking about your death or afterlife or where you will be. No one inhabited there. There was no realm to rule. Do you understand? Because here you have not only, so you have the ancient Egyptian mythology and religion. Mummification, it is called a funerary tradition, not really a religion, but the cultural tradition of mummifying formerly alive flesh in order to try to reach eternal life. But you have that viewpoint has morphed through Judaism into Christianity and the search for eternal life. So your religion that you're presently is the dominant religion on this planet, which is Christianity, is an outgrowth of Judaism, and Judaism is an outgrowth of these ancient Egyptian funerary traditions, including some of its cosmology and also some of its phonetic sound symbols. When you say blah, 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 blah prayer, and then you say amen. Amen comes from amen, which is from ancient Egypt, and it means, and so God is pleased. Like Tutankhamun, Tutankhamun. This is the name of dead Egyptian royal person, and you know him from the beautiful gold and things that were found in his tomb, so that he's quite well known, and the tomb has traveled far. But that it was used as some of the phonetic sound symbols in his name, and you have that in your Judeo-Christian religion, all right? And the story of the Exodus, which is a book of your original Bible, which is the Torah, and it is also the holiday known as Passover. The Exodus from Egypt shows that Judaism is an outgrowth of Egypt. And the Egypt that Judaism came out of was at that point largely corrupt and largely devolved, because in this search for eternal life, what they lost focus on in terms of cultivation of consciousness, they focused too heavily upon the material aspect of the search for eternal life. The material aspect for them was about building an elaborate tomb as a house for the dead, and also effectively and expensively preserving the body, your corporeal form, through mummification. So I do not actually think that things like mummification or cryogenic freezing will help you or anyone in the quest for eternal life. In fact, what I would consider those things to do is actually be more of a ballast or an anchor for your consciousness, preventing your consciousness from moving forward. If you could envision, like you might be more familiar if someone is in a coma and on life support, then their consciousness is not really free to travel every place it needs to go because it's tethered to the body that is still in between state, like an indeterminate state. It's like not really alive, but it's not really dead and decomposing, and so that spirit is not really quite free. And I would say the same thing is happening in the sense of mummification. Okay, how do you die consciously? When you die consciously, you are the body that you were inhabiting, and its decomposition processes or its cremation processes is a complete return to life, to light. I said it wrong. Is a complete return to light. So you are physical matter in your body, and that is light that is slowed down and is not moving at the speed of light. If you were to incinerate a body, the body returns to light. It is sped up. Everything about the material molecules of that body gets faster, and it becomes something that, according to our five senses description of reality, becomes non-material. Dematerializes the body through the process of cremation. The process of decomposition and the worms playing pinochle on your nose is a slower version of the return to light. As first, there's infrared as your body is in the decomposition process, but then also it is consumed by other organisms, which then translate the physicality structure from materiality into non-materiality. So you have the assistance of that pinochle is important stuff. They are helping you to be able to return to light and to return to an ephemeral and non-material format. That's where you really come from. So you come from an ephemeral, non-material format. You materialize into the physicality realm. And then what is ascension? So there's three different things you can do. You can have an unconscious death. You can keep, like the Roomba, the floor cleaning robots that just keep on bumping into walls. You can just have an unconscious death and just keep bumping into walls, keep on bumping into the membrane of death. Wrong notes on the piano. Still not there. Try again, try again, try again. You can have a conscious death. And what the ancient Egyptians and the Tibetans and many other cultures did was taught people and cultivated them in life how to have a conscious death, because they didn't really have the option of being able to not die and to ascend. And ascend means that you are going to be able to return to light without a mortality event. To ascend means that you are able to get to this spot over here where there is a doorway or a wormhole, not hitting against this membrane over here over and over again. And this membrane over here is a boundary for where I'm wiggling my pen, and where I'm wiggling my pen would be considered a heavenly reality, but you can't get there by going through here. This is like the cell membrane. And if you were like, that looks like a super duper fantastic cell, I want to get inside of it, how about I just punch right through the membrane? Then that is wrong. That is not how you actually get into a cell. That is how you cause destruction. And so you have to find the aperture or the way to be able to enter into that realm that is non-destructive. And yeah, I know a lot of light bulbs just went on. I totally sense that in you. So conscious death is when during your life you are cultivating yourself and cultivating your consciousness and making decisions and choosing your actions with the reference point of the assessment of death. So a lot of your present worldview, value system, and mythology in terms of what happens in afterlife is directly related to the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth into Day. So first, let me just give you a brief overview. Originally mistranslated as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, because the hieroglyphs of Egypt were not really translated effectively into English. They started to be translated about the late 1800s, but there was an enormous amount of the cultural filter through which these words were perceived. And the culture that you're in from the 1800s and up until now, and your post-World War II technology-based industrial culture, largely fears death and does not have a positive conversation about it. In fact, your value system is pretty much totally inverted. In Egypt, they focused everything they had on building an effective tomb and affording good mummification. That's what I mean when I talk about the corruption that happened in their culture, that what began as a very, very pure seeking after a freedom then devolved into materialistic, where you had their version of the cigar chomper that's like, hey kid, you want to get into the afterlife? Give me $5, I'll embalm you and you'll get in there. It's going to be great. Again, lighthearted, joking, but there was an out of balance emphasis on the accrual of material wealth so that you as a living person could create your positive afterlife. In the devolved level of Egyptian funerary tradition, only the wealthy could do this. Only the wealthy could afford to create like a large stone edifice where their embalmed remains could be as their house of death. The less the people that didn't have very much money in that world, they couldn't afford a tomb. But what they could afford was a scroll that is this teaching about what to do upon death. So you guys, you don't have like the Tibetan book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead or the Egyptian Book of Coming Forth in Today. When the hieroglyphics were properly translated, more recently, then the clarification was made. It's not the Book of the Dead, it's the Book of Coming Forth in Today, because they did not look at it as hitting a brick wall. Boom, you are dead. They looked at it as the opening of a door, the opening of a portal, and the stepping through of your consciousness into an exalted and expanded reality. And so in your present world, you are hugely disadvantaged, and you are not very well trained in terms of building your muscles and doing your cardio, and upon death, it's like, boom, time to run that marathon. And this is the unconscious death. Most people who are in this present culture that I am in, and that you are all natives of this culture, mostly there's a lot of fear around death. There's a non-conversation. Mostly there's not such a thing as a conscious death. So a conscious death is really pretty much living your life with the recognition that you will eventually have an end, and that you do have to have longer term values than just the immediate fulfillment of your whims during life. So in this world that we find ourselves in together, it's kind of like eat, drink, and be merry. Like, do whatever you want to do, and don't think about death. And in these other cultures, like Tibet and Egypt, they thought about death a lot, and not just those two cultures, because there's the samurai traditions of Asia, where people spent whole lifetimes perfectly crafting their last line, the thing that they would say is their last words on earth, like a poem. They spent their whole time. Imagine that. Like, if all day long, whatever you're doing, like your various daily chores, while you think about, I must write a good poem, something pithy and excellent that I can say as my last words on this earth. Like, very, very few people do that in this world that we're in. Most people are hugely focused on their fulfillment of their present needs. So you're not trying to save up money to be able to buy an expensive tomb or have excellent mummification, or even to afford a scroll that will inform yourself as your dead consciousness, where to go and what they have to do. You're really much more interested in, like, people who want to have a mansion for them to be alive in, or build a business and have a lot of money coming in, or wear expensive clothing or jewelry, and then think nothing at all about what will happen next. And that just means that not doing the exercises, and when the starting pistol goes off on the race when you're dead, then this is everyone from this culture, like, you're dead and you're like, what? And you're just kind of like Roombas, like kind of bumble around. All of that is intentional. It is hugely disempowering, and it means that the newly dead in your society are very, very disadvantaged. They don't really know where to go, what to do, or what's the procedure, or what to happen. So then they are those consciousnesses are ripe for exploitation as they enter into the membrane of death, and they don't really know what is the procedure. Back to the cultural framework of what happens after you die, that comes from the Egyptian book of Coming Forth into Day. So in that mythology, which has heavily influenced Judaism and then its outgrowth Christianity and probably your own mind, and also all of pop culture, including that, it's a fun comedy series called The Good Place that is about people's souls being assessed after they die. What happens after you die? Something is going to determine your qualities. So in ancient Egypt, this was known as the Hall of Mat. M-A'-A-T, mat, meaning balance. One of the original scales, like the scales of Libra or the scales of justice, where you have one dish over here, one dish over here, and then they have a pivot point, and they balance back and forth. And in ancient Egypt, it was your heart was weighed against a feather, and a feather's pretty light. And so if your heart is heavy, if you carry guilt, shame, regret, your conscience is bothering you, weighs you down, and then what happens? You get fed to the recycling monster. All right, try it all again, which is kind of like, wrong note, try it all again, back to the beginning. And also you would have to face that assessment before you're even able to go through this whole array of tests. So the idea, just to make this go fast, you're in the book of Coming Forth into Day, it describes that you, the newly dead, your consciousness, will face challenges and tests. You will be tested not in the same way like the school aptitude tests, where you will have to have a number 2 pencil and there will be a series of math and verbal questions. No, more a sense of a test of your tensile strength, like how much does it take to break you, or the test of the overall structure, the strength of the structure of your belief system. Because all of this testing happened before you got into your raft, your ship of consciousness, and before you attempted to make it and coincide with the sunbark of Ra so that you could get on board and so that you could be sailing the oceans of consciousness, the stellar network, on that ship that is a collection of eternal and immortal consciousnesses. But you have to pass the audition, you have to have a raft and a belief system and a sense of self that is coherent enough to stick together. And these are waveforms. We're talking about being laser light, being waveforms that are coherent and that have longevity. They stick together so that way you will continue to move, continue to travel, continue to emanate, and not to disperse or to devolve through friction or through lack of organization, through lack of coherence. So you're going to go, as a soul, you're going to go through all of these challenges to see if you're good enough to run the marathon. If you can't make it through this, like, hey kid, you ain't going to finish the marathon. So in life, you do your training, and then you go through all these various afterlife tests, and then if you're good enough, then you make it to the sunbark of Ra, and then you are part of the immortals. You're in the band. You're in the band of immortals, and you're able to, your life doesn't end, your existence doesn't end. You're able to then journey forward as part of this collective. And if that sounds very similar to what I did and continue to do as Aurora, it is. It is very similar, except I did not die as Aurora in ancient concurrent Atlantis. I ascended, which is to transcend material physical reality without having a mortality event. So that means that I did not leave behind a corpse. There was not a graveyard. We didn't have graveyards back then. There was no corpse to bury. You did not have graveyards. You did not visit the bones of your ancestors or your loved ones in order to see them. You would see your loved ones going across the sky every day. And this is also how the ancient Egyptians viewed the sun. They were not in grief from the loss of their loved ones, they were like, oh no, my loved one is right up there. It's right up there in the sky. I see him. He's shining like a big giant light up there. And it was a very different sense of staying connected to, or remaining, continuing to be able to access your loved ones, not feeling that sense of like they're gone, poof, bye-bye forever. And in our present world, even though, of course, wait, hold on a second, I have to organize my drinks station over here. In our present world, try one more time. In our present world, death is hugely traumatic because people don't really have a value system, a belief system, or they still have so many questions, big questions. In this world that we're in right now, everybody's got questions about like who you are, what is the meaning of life, what is the purpose of life, why are you here, and then the question of like what happens after you die, why does death exist, and what happens after you die. These are all largely unanswered. And then there is a great deal of insecurity or imbalance or fear that happens from the experience, from having to face those things. The basic foundation cosmic law truth is that as you are alive, and the momentum and the behavior patterns and mental patterns and emotional energy patterns that you are embodying while you're in your life, you will continue in those patterns after you're no longer alive. And no longer alive can be through unconscious death, conscious death, or ascension. But basically, you're creating a substrate of patterns in this experience now, and those patterns will continue. And what you want to do is to create life-giving patterns that will stay together and continue to sustain your consciousness even as you are no longer in a somatic cellular body eating physical food. And if you have generated and cultivated those patterns in an effective way, then you will have the eternal life that you're seeking. And if you have not, then you will not have the successful death, transcendence, and entering into eternity that you're interested in. Okay, so the ancient book of from Egypt, you're going to be judged in the Hall of Mat. And how this relates to what you're very, very aware of, your present level of Christianity, where you reach the pearly gates and there's a big book and you will be, or you're going to look to see if your name is in the book, or the book of Revelation, where it's if you have not lived your life effectively and in an exemplary way and with your value system, then you'll be incinerated, and only those who have lived in accordance with the set of religious laws and embodied the correct value system will have eternal life. And that all of that is on the anthropomorphic level. What is actually happening on an energetic level is you have to be shaped the right way. If you can envision your body as a series of energy conduits, and if you are not effectively shaped, when you are exposed to energy, the force of that energy will deform you. And at a certain point, you will be so deformed that you will be disintegrated because you don't have structural integrity, just from the fire hose of light, which is information that is being presented to you. So when there is a conflict, like you know what breaks the matchsticks of your polygonal thought structures, conflict. When you're like, I assert this, so here's an angle, and like imagine this is a piece of wood and it's part of the larger raft that you're creating. You're like, this is a truth in my life. Like whatever. I always wear red socks on Tuesday. But then you've got all of these examples of you not wearing red socks on Tuesday. And when that assertion is tested for its tensile strength, well, you don't always wear red socks on Tuesday. That got easily broken. And so one thing that, it's beyond hypocrisy. So hypocrisy is when you say, I always wear red socks on Tuesday, and you don't. But then there's also self-conflict, where you're like, I believe in wearing red socks on Tuesday, but then I also believe in wearing blue socks on Tuesday. And then these two assertions are in conflict. They don't have structural integrity. They don't meet up. They don't cause the larger whole of who you are to withstand scrutiny. So the whole, in a more positive, more loving sense, my red clipboard, or clipboard with red X's, or any of these other, which is just, a lighthearted allegory and not something that you should worship as religious truth. But these other things that are super heavy that people worship as religious truth, in the best sense, they are helpful because what they are doing is being able to determine whether you are shaped correctly, whether your ideas about life are accurate, and whether they are in self-conflict. So computer programmers in this class, you know what I'm talking about. This is kind of like assessing a system that has been created. I'm not a transhumanist, but to look at whether there's conflict in that system. Because if you have, let's say, a group of, in computers, there's a group of assertions, like always do this, never do this. When this happens, do this, never do this. And if you have it set up in the right way, you have a frictionless system that keeps on going. But if you have it set up in not a good way, then you're like, okay, the system says it's Tuesday, it's time to wear red socks, but it's also time to wear blue socks. And then this is the computer rocking back and forth. Red socks, blue socks, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, all right? And then that's the destruction of the system. Or the system does not have integrity because it has inner self-conflict. So in this world that we're in right now, this culture that we're in, and the viewpoint of death, the viewpoint of what is the meaning of life, the viewpoint of what it is to be a good person, there are so many conflicts, and it can be incredibly difficult to hone your belief system and structure it effectively so that you do not have these levels of self-conflict, which, upon scrutiny, imagine the brightest light, like here's the sunlight is, coming in through my painting window over here. Just imagine it's like the brightest floodlight that's going to look at you in excruciating detail. And you're going to be able to see, like, these are all the things that fit together and these are all the things that don't fit together. In many ways, you would want to know before you set off on your cosmic journey, because otherwise you're not provisioned for you're not going to make it to your destination. You're not provisioned. And in the ancient Egyptian myth, it's again allegory, but somewhat accurate. The sun bark faces adversaries. You know who is the adversary it faces? Set. Actually, no. This is very interesting. So somewhere along the line, the character of Set, who is analogous to Satan, became wildly distorted. And I don't want to do a whole assessment of it, but I will say that at some point, Set was jealous and just destroyed Osiris. But at another point, Set is supposed to be perched on the prow of the sunbark of Ra, and is supposed to have like this spear that is meant to kill the darkness that is poised like a giant mouth in front of the sunbark every morning when the sun is trying to rise. So according to that mythology or worldview, every morning as the sun is coming up and the dawn, it is a birth. It's birth of the day, and it's birth of a new life, and that there's this darkness monster that stands in front of the sun and is like, oh, you think you're gonna get born? You think you're gonna arise? You think you're gonna have the dawn of day? No, I'm gonna stand in front of you with my giant, mean darkness teeth, and I'm going to try to eat you. And the idea is that Set was supposed to kill that darkness monster so that then the sunbark could come forward. All of that aside, just internalize this truth. The aphorism, it is always darkest before the dawn, was literally a part of this mythology, that there would be an adversary, an obstacle, a something that would try to inhibit the bursting forth into day. And now if we go into Christian mythology, when we talk about the crucifixion and the death of Jesus, and in that darkest moment after suffering and torture and the devastating injuries of crucifixion, that it is said that Jesus, Yeshua, said his last words were about fear of abandonment, and then I now consign myself into you. That what he actually spoke was the words from the Egyptian Book of the Dead that were about coming forth into day. That was more accurately translated, but has been, of course, mistranslated from his life and then brought into a whole distorted cultural paradigm of what is Christianity. So there was a lot of agenda behind the distortion, but it is said that what he actually did was went through that darkness and then burst forth into the light of dawn. But I don't want to bring that up too much because that is like dark stuff and torture, and also has been used as a wedge to take you away from your empowerment. So I just didn't want to bring that up too much. But because when we talk about religion, mythology, cultural worldview, all of these things, hold them lightly. They are not to be looked at as direct templates for existence. They are meant to be guideposts that hopefully give you an inspiration about how to move forward. But all of that stuff becomes no longer relevant since 2001 and the invention of Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Since 2001 and the creation, generation, and sustenance of Flying Rainbow Lasagne, all prophecies are no longer relevant, because this is like pressing the big red button. Oh, the prophecy says, I'm looking down the road, all these things are going to happen. Press the big red button. All of a sudden the view has changed, and we press the big red button all the time. So the things that were seemingly inevitable or that were prepared as consequences in reality, or that might have been prophesized about, are no longer relevant because time has shifted. We have changed the fabric and structure of reality. I want to look at my notes, and I want to say, so I wanted to speak a little bit about my personal experience of dying, or avoiding the necessity of death, because that is what Flying Rainbow Lasagne is. That Flying Rainbow Lasagne is my response to the impending death of this body and the person who is in this body, and generating, creating, and innovating a way not to have to die. So you have a new option. You can die the unconscious death. You can die the conscious death. You can ascend, and all of those things have been in existence prior to 2001. And then since 2001, you can Flying Rainbow Lasagne, which is a completely new opportunity. And I want to do a little bit of AMA, Ask Me Anything, Q&A, because I get a lot out of that in terms of being able to listen to where your questions are coming from, speak to your questions, and also share about my experience. So, you know, I'm very open to that. If you want to ask me questions in the chat. All right. But wait, I want to get through all of this stuff too. So crossing the duat. What is this about? The duat is kind of analogous to the bardo. This is from Tibet. The bardo is a great place of wandering. And if you go into Jewish mythology, there's not really a story about what afterlife is in the Torah. And the belief was that the dead wandered a gray, foggy place called Sheol, S-H-E-O-L. And that it's a world between worlds. That is what the membrane of death is. All right? It's a world between worlds. But you're not actually supposed to go there. So all of these mythologies, they talk about you go there, you get confused as a dead person, then you have to kind of go past these obstacles and get to the other side. But I'm telling you, don't even go there, all right? I could make so many jokes. Don't go there, you avoid that place. But let's say something happens and you find yourself there. So the whole reason for studying in life, doing the muscle building in life, and the preparation for the marathon is that when you die, you might be confused. You're no longer able to think clearly and see clearly and know where you're supposed to go. And hopefully the training that you went through in life, both your religious training, how you look at the world, and also your cultivation of self. Some of these Egyptian mystery schools had aspirants literally go through an obstacle course that was similar to what they felt you would experience when you are dead. And some of it might be you had to swim a moat that was infested with hungry alligators, and hold your breath, go underneath partitions and come up into a secret chamber, all these different things. You had to learn how to do that. Those, again, are character building exercises. If you are alive, just like if you can do an Ironman triathlon, you're look, I trained and I ran the race and I did it and I made it. It gives you a type of inner strength, so that then when you face something in your afterlife, that you're I don't know what to do, but you remember, look, I was able to run an Ironman, or I was able to swim past those hungry alligators. I know I can do this too. That's the idea. The idea is that it builds a sense of self-assurance in your character, that you can face obstacles, that you can make it through these things. So in the world that you're in and the culture that you're in right now, you get no training. No training. And also, largely during life, the training and imprint of whom you're made to be is like very disempowering. You know, very much about just listening to authority, not really learning, exploring, and knowing who you are. If you follow the prescriptions in society, you will get money. You can have a house and a car and a bank account and all those things. You will be totally unprepared for the afterlife. And so the enslavers of humanity, those who have genetically modified you, those who have brought you down from your exaltedness, those who amnesia and mind wipe you, those who don't want you to remember that you're God, they love you living an unconscious life that is largely focused on materialism. Not the materialism of having a fancy mummification, but the materialism of whatever, you know, expensive acrylic nails or a fancy car or something like that. Those things will not serve you upon death. Those things will not serve you. What are the things that will serve you upon death? Is accreting light, getting more information and more wisdom inside of you, the things that actually translate. So I talk about this with you guys a lot. Your eternal identity and what you claim as yourself and how you describe as yourself, in contrast with who you are as an ego state. So if you are pouring all of your resources into cultivating your ego, that would be like having a closet full of dresses, or having a lot of whatever, money in your bank account, or all of these things. I define myself by these things. And when you don't have those things anymore, who are you? And that is the crushing, that is the very, very challenging question that many people face in afterlife. And then in afterlife, in the Judeo-Christian current paradigm that you're most familiar with, then you have this sense of, first of all, during your life, being constantly fighting against and constantly falsely accused by Satan, the adversary, who was originally like not supposed to be doing that, who was originally supposed to be somehow, this is too mythological, but whatever, having difficulties moving forward in an untrammeled state in your life without false accusations, and then upon your death, having like a judgment, like that movie Defending Your Life. It's fun, comedic, and deep, and worthy type of comedy. If you want to watch that, I endorse it. But not everything that's true that they purport to be truthful in that movie. But it basically, Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks die and find themselves in a place called Judgment City. And what happens there is they are being assessed in a courtroom setting. Each person individually has to defend their life, and you have both your prosecutor and the defendant. You have a lawyer who's helping you to defend yourself, and the prosecutor gets to play clips of all of your clips reel of all the things that you've done wrong. And some of them are, crimes, but some of them are just mere embarrassments. The clips reel of this guy is like falling down a mountain, tripping over silly things, totally making an ass of himself. And that's, like the accusations of who you were in life. And then he's allowed to counter with choosing examples of himself in heroic postures, altruism, genuinely helping people. I'm not saying this is what the end of your life is going to be like, but I will say this. You don't have a mystery school tradition. You have Hollywood. You don't have a lineage of gurus. And gurus is maybe a pejorative term, but in its positive sense, gurus or the Sangha is the lineage of those who have already made this journey, trekked up a mountain. They already did it, and they left behind all those pitons and the things that help you to climb up the mountain, and they're there to help you kind of like leverage yourself on up. They made a path and they did it, and then they're also there to help guide you through there. But you don't have that. But the best that you've got is some books television shows, maybe some inspirational movies to kind of guide you there. The idea is that when it's your momentum, like you're going in a particular direction as a personality, as a soul, as consciousness, and then in the cessation of your life force, a cessation of your body moving through time, but your consciousness continues onward. And in what form and in what direction does your consciousness continue onward? And how far can it go? In abstraction, your consciousness precedes the existence of your somatic cellular body. Your consciousness is an inherent part of the conception of your body vessel. And then as you have a somatic cellular body, it makes more of your consciousness. Your chakras precede the existence of your physical body. Your physical body then also, when it gets born, successfully is a house for your chakras and feeds and revivifies your chakras. Remember, when you're eating your food and you are a taste bud on the tongue of God and you're sending that information to this coherent family of light that sustains them and helps, which is actually you in another dimension. And then when you no longer have a physical body, you have just your energy body, just your light body, a body that is made out of a series of concepts, ideas, conceptions, and abstractions. And that the intention is that everything that you've eaten and ingested and the light that you've accreted here gives you more momentum to keep going. Otherwise, you would be like, well, Aurora, like, why would I go through all these difficulties of having a body and being alive and eating food and achieving the personal debts that you achieve in being here? Why would I want to be imperiled in that way? And the answer is because this is where you get more gas to make your car go. And then you keep your car going. It's very, very good and positive when you look at it in the uncorrupted way of what it's supposed to be. So to contrast, you guys feel like I was free as a light being, then I became embodied, now I'm in this dumb meat suit and I'm stuck here and I have to keep on reincarnating over and over and I'm so sad and unhappy about it. And I'm like, no, look at it like this. You used to be a pure light body being, pure information, pure energy. Through wonderful miracles, you became embodied into the physical body that you helped co-create and cultivate. And in this embodiment state, you are, I would say getting rich, you are getting more information, more perspective, and more emotional wisdom, and more emotional truth on a soul level. And then through one of these various different ways of exiting, you won't be in the physical body anymore, but that this is your rocket fuel to keep you going into the next journey, into the next incarnation. There's a reason why you did this. You didn't get trapped or fall or get stuck here, but that you're here purposefully in order to get resources of consciousness. And then those resources are what help you to continue to go in positive directions, with all of this being the perpetual motion machine. Time currents flowing perpetually, and your consciousness, like a red blood cell, flowing within those time currents perpetually. In a positive way, not flowing perpetually from like torture to torture, but flowing through different states of learning and growing smarter. And that's why you come into being. It's why do you have a physical body instead of being purely abstract all the time? Because when you're purely abstract, you're not in this potential for growth. And everything is kind of set, not set, the myth, everything is established or stuck or calcified in the realm of pure light. Like all of these truths are already established, and it is when you actually enter into embodiment and into this world of huge unpredictability, that is where you have the capacity to learn and to grow and to shift reality structures and to make stuff happen and to influence reality is the best way to say it, to participate in and influence reality and to be influenced by reality. There's a huge value in being alive. And then the intention in being alive is not to be like, I'm alive and then I can't wait to be dead. which is what a lot of people in this time place feel. A lot of people here now, and possibly, I'm not comparing because I don't know, but what is it like to be here now? Many people are very out of energy, and they look forward to the release that they expect will accompany their death experience. And they think that things will get easier. So death is actually not a solution. Things don't get easier. But I don't want you to think that in terms of like, oh no, what about my dead loved ones? Like they're out of the frying pan into the fire. What's happening to them? No, wait, instead of using that analogy. Oh no, what's happening to my loved ones who have died? I thought they were safe and kind of floating on a heavenly cloud. Are they okay? Are they not okay? And then also, I thought that things would get easier. Like life is so hard, and death is when you don't have to try anymore in order to do stuff, buy toilet paper or make things happen. I thought this would be easy, and I'm telling you, nope, death is not the solution. It's not the exit, and it's not the easy, comfortable place that you get to go to that you think about. And that's that maybe all of that makes you kind of back up and be like, that doesn't sound very good, and it's not what I want. But you understand from the perspective that I'm giving you, which is totally truthful and which is intended to protect you and empower you, because death was never supposed to be something that you were supposed to experience, and these various other cultures have approached death in different ways, which are valid for them in their time place. And then what you are presently experiencing here is just completely inadequate in terms of informing you about what death is and preparing you for death. So, okay, I have to talk a little bit about my experience, but I also have to talk now about your current culture and be highly critical of your current culture. Because you have the objective materialist viewpoint or paradigm that says, I believe in my five senses, and according to the five senses, when the death or mortality event occurs, then what you see is a corpse that is no longer moving, which I've done that before in showing you on the whiteboard. That means that the consciousness impulse is no longer jumping from moment to moment at the Planck length. It stops jumping. And it also means that your DNA stops doing its dance, because it is that dance that is what propels your consciousness from train car to train car, from moment to moment at the Planck length. The vivification, the animation, the part of you that moves is no longer here and is no longer jumping. But the corporeal cellular aspect of yourself remains. And so according to the five senses viewpoint of reality, I can't even recognize or validate the existence of consciousness or of your consciousness, but I can say your body is here and your body was moving, and then at a certain point your body stopped moving, and then either worms played pinochle on your snout, or we cremated you and you returned into a state of pure energy. And that objective materialist viewpoint looks at the death event as something that is entirely you swimming around in your own kiddie pool. It looks at that event as something that is an internal consciousness and emotion based experience that does not happen in a consensual reality, meaning a larger reality that others can also agree with. The objective materialist viewpoint looks at afterlife experiences and near-death experiences as being merely the echoes and reverberations of a brain neurological cognitive structure that once had signals and input that now is in its death throes and is simply firing wildly in it as an internal experience, not something where you are going through a door, coming forth into day, and having your debutante ball and saying, hi, cosmic world, here I am, I've just died and I came forth. That is not what science and medical science, for the most part, view and look at the death experience as. Mostly they look at the death experience as a arbitrary, personal, neurological event that is happening, we would call it in the interior, or unique to your own presence, not something that is connected to. So to that viewpoint, if you were dying or dead and you encountered your dead relative, like your grandma, that you would, according to medical science, be encountering what you are manufacturing as a memory, an envisionment, and an expectation or an interpretation structure that is unique to you. Not that your grandmother actually lived, no longer has a corporeal form, but still has an ephemeral form that could then interact with you and guide you or whatever, inspire you or comfort you in any way. And would say the same, objective materialist science would say the same thing about the interaction with any consciousness residues, because it does not contain in its structure or paradigm the possibility of consciousness reverberations continuing onward. So if you're going to meet your grandmother or George Washington or a dinosaur, anything or anyone who has died or passed on, science would not validate that, would say you're simply interacting with your memory or your expectation or a projection of something that is there. In analogy, medical science also looks at the psychedelic experience as something that is arising entirely as your own neurological kiddie pool. You've ingested a molecule and weird things are happening in your own brain that you're swimming around and interpreting, but science does not give you the validation of taking a molecule and then going through a doorway or through a portal into a reality that is inhabited by other consciousnesses, where you're having an interaction, there's entities, there's organisms, there's stuff that's alive, there's stuff that once was alive, there's stuff that was never alive, and then you coming back into your body. So these are, these are two different viewpoints. I want to say they're both valid viewpoints, but what I really want to say is you in life are generating reality from your viewpoint and your expectations about what is truth. And that happens when you are in your somatic alive body, and that happens when you are no longer in your somatic alive body. It is just a question of the degree of what you are generating. And this is where we now, let's talk lasagna, because I really wanted to spend a lot of time today in talking about lasagna. Lasagna is about a co-creative experience, blending together your inner world of ephemera, hopes, dreams, passions, thought structures, values, creativity, in the terms of being able to think new thoughts, and also creativity in terms of creative energy, stuff that's inside of you that is not measurable according to the five senses, blending and seamlessly integrating that with the realm of the five senses, the realm of everything, things that everyone can agree with, things that can be measured by science. The inside becomes the outside, and the outside becomes the inside. And this is what happens during your life. So I hope that this is starting to, I can kind of sense, this is what I sense with you guys when I reach out with my mind. It's like here are connections, they're like, the connections are almost made, but they're not quite there. You're like, wait, so I'm supposed to be making stuff with my mind, yes. And I'm supposed to be empowered during my life to make stuff with my mind, yes. And then even when I'm not defined as alive or in the body, I'm still supposed to be making stuff with my mind, and that is my purpose for this journey. And I'm like, yes. So okay, I, Aurora, lived in the pristine world known as ancient or concurrent Atlantis. I ascended and am part of a collective of consciousness that is my Aurora Collective. And we don't just do nothing. No, we do a lot of stuff. So it is not the sense of being inactive or disempowered. I'm very active and I'm highly empowered, making stuff and doing things. And this is what is supposed to happen. The ideal system, and sometimes it's just easier for me to speak in terms of ideals, is for you to grow your muscles, grow more light, become smarter and wiser and more responsible, and continually become more empowered to create and generate reality until the point that you're God and you're creating and generating, sustaining reality. All right? That's it. That's just remember that. I'll go over it again. Your whole point for being is to be able to grow more information, become wiser, become more responsible, generate reality, get good at generating reality, kind of like getting good at playing songs, and then get to the point where you're like the ultimate maestro and virtuoso, which is what it is to be God, to create reality. and the invention of death and the experience of death. And now what you're doing is refocusing towards the transcendence of death. All of that, all of those are different flavors or different styles or different pathways to doing the thing that I'm telling you about, which is conscious reality creation. And in the scientific viewpoint, if you're going to create an afterlife, it's like creating a dream. Like nothing has to fit together. You don't care about self-conflict. You don't care about whether you wear red socks on Tuesdays and blue socks on Tuesdays. It doesn't matter because it's a dream, because nothing matters. Now it's a purple unicorn, right? Because in a dream, it's like you don't have to have integument. You don't have to have causality structure. Like a thing happens and another weird thing happens and another weird thing happens. Nothing matters. Who cares? And it's also, I hope that that comes across as like, that is a lack of intelligence. That is a lack of information. True intelligence and true information is the harmonic structure and excellence of both ideas and assertions and values and events. Everything fits together. So a very poorly, a dream or a very poorly written novel are things where it's like, that, what is going on? Like that plot doesn't make sense at all. There's a giant inconsistency. There's a plot hole. Who is this character? How did this happen? How did we get here? Oh, well, who cares? And then a really excellent novel is one where all of the characters are beautifully crafted. Everything fits together beautifully. All of the actions have, logical reactions, and that they cause cascades and dominoes of events. That's an expert, that's literature, as opposed to, whatever, like a stupid comic book where there's just like kapow, and then you're here, and then you're here, and everything's disjointed and nothing makes sense. So what you're attempting to do, or what is the intention for you to do, is to generate coherent realities. So as a light body, you need to be coherent. This light body is made of data. It is also made of possibilities and probabilities and timelines. It's made out of a series of events. And what you want to do in being in time is create and generate and inhabit and be a part of these events that make sense and that actually fit together. And you practice doing that when you are in your physical body, and you also practice doing that when you are non-embodied. Wait, I can't actually see. Oh, I have to take away things on my screen. Hold on a second. I have to press buttons. If I wanted to check the chat, because I wanted to make sure if you guys were asking me questions that I could respond to it. So, yeah, because I would like to share with you if you have questions about who I am and what I've been doing. Okay, because I'm scrolling. Hold on a second. Okay, wait. So this is good stuff. Tibetan Book of the Dead, or Bardo Todal. How to get across the Bardo, how to get across this gray wandering place. The Tibetans describe the Bardo realm as an in-between realm, as a place of wandering or a limbo or an indeterminate state where your consciousness is intended to go across that plane to get to the other side and be reborn. Again, ancient Egypt, you want to get across the duat to be able to join the immortals. And in this cultural vestige, what you have is the sense of wanting to get through a series of obstacles or across a world of confusion in order to be able to be reborn on the other side. And the circumstances for that rebirth, now we get into this question of like what you have earned, karma, and all of those things. Karma, someone asked me this as a question actually. Karma as it presently stands is not a pristine system. That means that you do not always get what you deserve, and you exist right now in a world of huge injustices because many people, in terms of their lives, have not gotten what they deserved. Many good people die, and then there's soul yoinkage. The claw, like the carnival claw, comes down and says, I will take this soul and put you over here into a pile of crap, even though you earned a much, much better life. And similarly, let's say you're a horrible criminal and you die, we'll just take this soul, and instead of putting you into the crap, you were heading to the crap, but will put you into an ice cream positive life, and that all its technological distortion of the results that you have actually earned. So the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it says, when you die, there will be a light. Don't go to the first light. Don't go to the second light. Don't go to the third light, because they're all reality structures that are being offered to you. They are reality structures that you can inhabit if you are drawn to them. So I'm beyond Tibetan Book of the Dead. I'll just tell you from my own impression and from my own direct seeing. How does conception happen? How do you get conceived as a baby? Because there are all these different portals that are opportunities for you to come into a womb and gestate. And what happens is you are fascinated by, literally, it's like the definition, the root word of what it is to be fascinated. You're drawn in by your interest in the lives and activities of the people that will become your mother and your father. And you see them in their moment of lovemaking, and you see the potential for life there, and you get so fascinated and so drawn in that you come into that moment when the genetic material of the sperm and the egg come together. Brief pause on this biology lesson, because we need to hug Cheeky. Miss Princess Cheeky has awakened, even though it's not actually time for us to be complete. She might have heard my treadmill beeping or something like that. You can tell I have a new light over here because it gets dark so early. That's why the lighting here is so crazy when I bend down. Hold on one moment. Cheeky, everybody loves you. You know what she just said? She just said, maybe there could be like something to inspire me for the next couple of minutes while you finish class. We got to get Cheeky some inspiration. Hold on 1 minute. I'm just going to press pause. Press pause. Thank you to everyone who's here in class. Thank you. Hold on a moment. And then you are drawn in this act of witnessing this act of lovemaking of your parents, and then into that magical moment, and your consciousness becomes the third participant in, again, that magical moment that then is the genesis of life and actually coming into the world. So it might be difficult from your human ego perspective to ever think of it, to ever consider that you might have been so really loving of your mother and your father that you saw them in their moment of lovemaking, that you wanted to become in and be a part of their family. This is conscious birth. This is conscious conception. That I know, because first of all, many people have problems with their parents, so they might not even be able to think like, I actually wanted to come into this family. I wanted to come into that womb. Like, what am I thinking? But that's your human ego and the experiences you have had subsequent to that original experience of coming in. Please return to your true, pure, angelic self and think about what it was like when you were non-embodied and a pure potential, and when you perceived the opportunity to come into this life with all of its ups and downs. And you were drawn in and also like made a choice, but choice is not the best word. You aligned with that reality. So that's the more accurate, from my personal seeing, way that this happens. And sometimes you might feel regret in your life. You're like, life is hard. Why did I do this? Or maybe your mom and dad are driving you crazy. You're like, why did I choose these people? Why did I choose this family? But from your highest self, most angelic perspective, you did it for a reason and you don't regret it. But sometimes in the difficulties of being here, I recognize that you might feel buyer's remorse or regret. The Tibetan Book of the Dead basically tells you that there will be opportunities presented to you. Do you need to learn these lessons? If so, please choose door number 1. No, you don't need to learn those lessons? Then please move further down the hallway, and maybe you need to learn these lessons behind door number 4. Yes? No? No, you don't need to learn those lessons? Please move further down the hallway, and that it's a very, very long hallway, and that you will be presented with all of these opportunities. Do you need to learn this? Do you need to learn this? And it's, again, not like the school aptitude tests, a different type of test. And if your attention is drawn in to those circumstances and to those edifices, you need to learn about it. This is the opposite of soul yoinkage. This is 100% in a pristine system, the way it's supposed to be, where you choose your own curriculum. And that's how you can have no regret. even coming into this world that is very unjust and does not often align with your true soul curriculum, you chose that too. Please know this. Please know this. Every single one of you, instead of saying bad asses, now I call people good asses. You're the good asses. You came in actually very intentionally. You're like, yeah, there's a lot of injustice there, and there's a lot of bad crapola and shit, and I'm going in. I'm going to do this. So you really did make very clear alignments about going into systems that are perturbed, out of balance, unfair, unjust, not to come here and like be in the shit and be a victim, but to fix, heal, ameliorate, and disintegrate and demolish those systems. So in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if you bypass all of these doors on the hallway, like really, like let's say you're, or whatever, food on a platter, you're walking down a long hallway and this guy's like, would you like some prawns? Nope, not hungry. How about some beef? Nope, not interested. How about some crudités? Nope, not interested. You walk down past every single possible thing you could possibly eat. You're like, I'm really genuinely not interested in any of these foods. When you get to the end of the hallway, it means that you are done with incarnating within this level of reality. But it doesn't mean that you poof out of existence. It does not mean that you go to entropy or non-existence. It means that you have transcended the things that you can learn in this level of reality, and then you are ready for the next level of reality. And that is what the successful death is like, and that is also what ascension is like. So I bring this up because so in your present world of looking at things, only a very few rare select group of people actually ascends. They're like the elite super athletes that can run 100 miles, but everyone else is, you know, sitting on the couch eating potato chips, and they're not really doing the ascension journey. This is old, not current, and then most people would die. Because I don't want you to feel like if you have loved ones or pets or people in your life who died, that it's like, oh, they failed, you know, they failed and they're not going anyplace and whatever. Like, no, I really want you to know that. And also in this moment, like now let's get real. And we can talk, and you can do Q&A with me, you know, until we complete class today. But let's really talk about this. So right now on this planet, you have options, and the options include dying an unconscious death, dying a conscious death, ascending, and flying rainbow lasagneing, right? And some people are choosing death. Like I told you, I come here and I offer things on a platter. Just like, you know, you're walking down the hallway, some of the things that are offered to you, one of the things that's offered to you is flying rainbow lasagna, which means a rearrangement of your genes and your genetic behavior and your capacity to experience time, rearranging and restoring who you truly are and the potentials within you that are the way it's truly supposed to be. And not everybody is interested in this. I offer things and I bring a message to you in freedom, but it's really up to you about whether you encompass and embody those opportunities for yourself. That some people might choose to die a conventional death. And this has everything to do with what's going on with planetary ascension, because I told you the entire planet is ascending. And so that's, if I'm a body and I'm ascending, and my cells on my shoulder over here, or my earlobe, they also have to choose to ascend. And each one of them also has their own chakra system that has to go from being out of alignment, moving towards death, and into eternal life and immortality. And if they don't, if each little cell on my body doesn't make that choice to like, I'm gonna stay alive, I'm gonna live, let's keep on being alive, you can sing that song, Staying Alive, if you want, then it doesn't get to be on me. And in the planet, if you make a choice, you're like, I am gonna stay alive, I'm going to stay alive, and I'm going to go into these levels of spiritual elevation and empowerment that make it possible for me to heal and regenerate my body, along with other things that would be considered supernatural miracles that you will experience as a holistic presence, because it's the entire ecosystem. When death was invented, it wasn't just like one guy died. That would have been a tragedy. A lot of people died, and also you had to eat food to stay alive. You had to ingest death, and that involves the death of other things. So then we involve this whole cycle of having to eat other things to stay alive and you dying. So the transcendence of death and the redefinition of what your journey of consciousness is not just an individual journey for you. It involves your entire ecosystem. And yes, there have been individuals whom have ascended over the past millennia, but they left a system of mortality, and the system of mortality continued onward. When we do this, what we're doing right now, you're not going to have a system of mortality anymore. It's not going to be like, see you suckers, we're all the immortals. This is me flying off being immortal. Hooray, I'm immortal. It's like, sorry about your day. Sorry that you're stuck down there being mortal and you're going to die. It is really about everything becoming immortal. I got a plant right here. It's a beautiful fern behind my computer. That fern is going to be immortal. My dog is going to be immortal. The tree outside of my window is going to be immortal. All of these organisms are going to change, or are in the process of changing and transforming and remembering and recognizing their true immortal sense of self and their true immortal definition of self, because we are all on the planet, this painting that is right back here, that is poorly lit, that is ascending and that is transcending death. So I'm going to diverge from my notes. How does a planet die? Like, the planet Tiamat, the asteroid belt, the rubble between Mars and Jupiter, that planet died. Planets die when they don't have a magnetosphere anymore. Mars doesn't have a magnetosphere. It's a dead planet. Venus doesn't have a magnetosphere. It is a dead planet. Earth would die if it did not have a magnetosphere. You would still have a corpse. You could still have a rock in space. It could be rubble, it could be a rock, it could be whatever, barren of biological life, but still have molecules in existence, but it's not alive. And you don't have to experience that. How does that happen? It can happen through a series of either cosmic catastrophes or human-created catastrophes. What happened in ancient or concurrent Atlantis? There was not only the genetic invasion that happened, that was not the moment that caused the catastrophe that you internalize as your primary trauma. Death was invented. Human chakras were sent out of alignment. And here's the key thing. Your dishevelment in terms of human infrastructure is, humans are an organ of the planet, and when you became out of balance, the entire planet became out of balance too. And your organ function in this world has to do with cognition and thought structures. So humans were like neurological cells on this planet, in this world, thinking the perfect divine thoughts of the planet. And when this invader came into the physical, it came into the human genetic code and invented death and destabilized your chakras and destabilized your thought forms, it's like causing harm to the brain or the central nervous system of the entire planet, and that destabilized our whole entire planet. And that could have caused the death of our planet. It could have caused not only the end to the biosphere and biological life on the surface of the planet, but an end to the magnetosphere, the time body of the planet around our planet. But that has not happened. And all of the work that you've been doing as individuals and as a collective to get yourself back on track and to realign with eternity and your true eternal self and your true definition of as an eternal being is the healing of this planet. This is why what we're experiencing is a planetary ascension, not just an individual ascension, and it is why it is so powerful, profound, and crucial for this to happen. It's a rectification of a very, very ancient injury, a very, very ancient injustice, and an ancient imbalance that caused death itself and that imperils the planet, an entire, very, very large group of consciousness that is this planet, but that we don't have to experience that. But let's say this, where my whole rant is coming from here. There are some people that I know in this world that are just tacitly accepting, like, oh yes, like a nuclear bomb will drop, our planet will die, or maybe a comet or an asteroid or whatever, some level of catastrophe that they are expecting, and key point, aligning with reality structures that involve the destruction of the entire planet. And that is very similar to the Book of Revelation, which talks about the catastrophe destruction of basically all life on this planet, and then a renewal, like the phoenix out of the ashes, that comes from that. I'm not agreeing with this. I'm describing it as a cultural edifice that you're expected to walk into. And that cultural edifice is the capstone of a pyramid that goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, and that involves ancient Tibet and the Mayan culture and all of these things. The expectation of an eschaton, the so let's spell it Eschation. So it's a little bit hard to find these days, but there is a very, very good auditory recording of Terence McKenna talking about his thoughts, not an endorsement, total endorsement of him as a man, because he had ups and downs as any humans do, but a great thinker, really amazing speaker. And he talked about how there's a parallel between the implantation of the idea structure. Eschaton means end of the world. Death is your own personal end of the world. And then there is a cultural expectation of the end of the world. That's the big end of the world. So if you died, that's your own personal end of the world. And there's no more you, but the world continues. And if the larger eschaton happens, there's no more you, but there's no more anyone. And there are many movies about this too. So there's the Bible and the final book of the Bible, I should say, the New Testament, the final book of the New Testament, that describes an end of everything, meaning everyone you know will die. Even the entire planet and every blade of grass will die, and then out of that will come a completely new context. Again, big red button has been pushed. That doesn't have to happen. But this talk that I'm pointing you to, it's worth researching, because I think that there's a fair bridge between these two expectations, that you generate reality. And when you are not generating reality, when you are no longer here, in a sense, you're like pulling out the support structures from reality. Reality becomes a Jenga tower that is no longer being emanated. Consensual reality. This is not reality where you consent, like I consent to be in reality, is the consensus. The reality that we agree to via consensus. We're like, yep, that's reality, we're all a part of it, and we all contribute towards that reality, and that the end of that reality is when that reality is not sustained in its structure when you withdraw your participation from it. Some of you are like, that's a good thing, because I don't like this reality. I'm withdrawing my participation from it. And I'm like, that's why I sighed heavily, like, I get you. I hear what you're saying. You don't want to add your energy to support of a corrupt or unjust reality structure. I validate that. It's like, I don't want to give my money to a corrupt charity, right? That where they skim it all off the top and then none of it gets to the people who are genuinely in need. I agree. But it's not necessary to completely destroy reality in order to make sure that there's some accountability and that your contributions go where they're truly needed. You actually can contribute towards reality and generate a reality that is a paradise state that is not only analogous to the experience you had in ancient concurrent Atlantis, but is even better, because you will not be invaded. Like if you have had a disease and then you develop immunity to that disease, you are not going to get it again. So our planet was exposed to a pathogen. The pathogen is in large part the concept of death and the experience of death. In transcending that pathogenic, it is a psychopathology, a mind pathology, you then become immune to it, to experiencing it in the future, and that can be in this earthly definition of reality plane, but it can also be in other time places too. All right, because antidote that you're developing here in this little petri dish actually is then applied as a healing molecule to all of these other reality structures that you also experience. So you experience many lives in many different places at the same time, and you're here now, and your awareness is focused here now, and that's good. You also, when you do healing here now, and the solutions that you come up with here now, like radial spokes, emanate outward to all of those other lives that you are also embedded within, and creates the healing in all of those places too, the transcendence of death. Well, I have so many things to talk about, but I also want to make sure if you have questions or comments, ask me now. But I'm not getting a lot of questions and comments. Okay, but that's absolutely fine. So it's not necessary for you to have a total destruction in order to have a total renewal. That's one of the things that I would like to get across to you. Many people, from the normalization of death, because think that it is necessary. Like a plant dies, but the seed is left behind, and you plant that seed, and then you get a new plant, and it is looked at as the cycle of life. And these cyclical natures are considered to be necessary, and they are part of your expectation, but I'm telling you they're not necessary, and you can have a different expectation. And that's what continuity of consciousness and eternal life is. So in this idea where you have to constantly be dying and then be reborn, like you have cycles: live, birth, die, live, birth, die. You know, birth, live, die, birth, live, die. But what do you do if you have eternal life? What was it like before you died? You didn't have cycles where you were born, you lived, you died. You were born and you lived, and then you didn't have to die, and you kept going, and you can return to that. And that is largely what the message that I have here to bring, and the embodiment that I have to bring, and the practicality structures that I have to bring. So, I mean, there's so much more from my notes that I can talk about. Now I'm diverging from my notes. Now I want to just talk lasagna, and I'm open to any questions that you have. What is lasagna? This is a review probably for many of you, but let me just do it and contextualize it in what we're talking about here. It is a rearrangement of your DNA back to factory settings in the way that you're supposed to be as an immortal. So the recognition that you are presently in a genetically modified body that has been diminished and diluted in its functionality, and then the return to your empowerment and your exalted state via Flying Rainbow Lasagne. I wanted to read this from my notes because I have it written actually so well, that Flying Rainbow Lasagne reconnects you to your Christ consciousness. That's what I was trying to scroll through and find. Wait, where is it? I don't know where it is. Blending of the inner and the outer. Afterlife could be a heavenly or a hellish realm, depending upon your inner state. Life and embodiment can be a heavenly or a hellish realm, depending upon your inner state. Okay, so I can't find my notes exactly. The Flying Rainbow Lasagne is a bridge that recapacitates you to connection with Christ consciousness, and from Christ consciousness, you can reconnect with this eternal life. Oh, good, a question, wait. I'm still trying to find this thing, because I'm sorry, I'm making these funny faces. I have it written here so well that I feel like it's written better than what I can say, but I don't always find it. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay. Thank you for your patience. One moment. Okay. You can tell. All right, so I have a lot to read. Because I'll just read. Because Earth and everybody on Earth and the entire cosmos is vibrating at a much faster rate. So wait. Okay, dependent upon the internal rate of vibration that each person is experiencing. For example, I've talked about this manifestation rate and the asymptotic curve, that your inner realm and your passions and creative acts now generating things much faster than they would have been. It might have been 20 years in the past to be able to manifest your dream house or build a business or something like that. Now you can do it in 1 year, all right? And that's because Earth and everybody on Earth and the entire cosmos is vibrating or moving or unfolding at a much faster rate. And the Flying Rainbow Lasagne is my method of transcending death. Here we go. Now we're into the part of the notes that I was trying to find. Created during my personal experience of coming into the physical body, during which this body and the person who was in this body was being psychically attacked by a force of pure evil. That is big stuff. That attack caused a lot of neurological damage, which I transcend all the time, as you can see, walking, talking, thinking clearly, making artwork and music. And the fact that I do all of those things is extraordinary because if I were not here, let's say, as an integument of light, I'm a light entity, Aurora, light entity. If I were not inhabiting this body as a light entity with all of this light integument, the body would have disintegrated. It would not be a container for consciousness. But I've been able to maintain it as a viable cellular container for over 20 years by not just flying rainbow lasagneing once, but flying rainbow lasagneing continually. This continual oscillation and new patterning in the movements of the dance of DNA and new experience of time. So instead of, this is where I like to say, I died, but I did not die. And also when I use the word I in some of these sentences in talking about my experience of the death experience and entering into physicality and being here and the portal of the Flying Rainbow Lasagne, the word I is complex. Because in this moment right now, I identify with my body. This is my body. I wasn't always feeling that way. I came into a body that wasn't my body, but it became my body. And I, when I speak of I, am Aurora. But if I say I died, but I did not die, I'm really talking about the person who was here before me. Died, but the body did not die, and I came in as an alternative presence to maintain the cellular structure of this body. Consciousness does not die, but ego presence dies. And the ego presence that was in this body not only died, but was, let's say, mutilated or deformed and is no longer in existence. That is why you will not find the previous occupant of this body. You will not find her like on the astral realm or on a cloud playing a harp or in a heavenly realm or in any of these cultural paradigms. I've spoken about this to you today. The momentum of your life continues to carry you forward in your death, but for her, she didn't have that experience. She didn't have that opportunity. Immense levels of injustice. That's all you need to know about my experience and the opportunity for me to be here. Very, very unjust situation that prompted me to intervene and come in, and not only to intervene through previously established possibilities, but to create and generate a whole new architecture or level of reality through which I could intervene, because it was that level of unfairness. That is how stinky the BS was in what I was fixing by being here. So when I talk about this, when I say I died but I did not die, body died, the previous ego died, but clearly I'm here and I'm in a presence. What does that mean? I, as light entity and light integument, have entered into this body, and I didn't leave. And I lasagneed, and I didn't stop lasagneing, and I continue to lasagna in a restructuring of not only what my body does, but a restructuring of time, so that I can be here, so that I can do this stuff, so that a lot of other important things can happen in causality structures. Okay, wait. My internal realm and also the external manifested, formerly three-dimensional realm, which is now a higher dimensional realm, came together. Yeah, we're redefining what lasagna is. When you take the mundane reality that doesn't have a lot of supernatural stuff imbued into it, and then you imbue it with energy, miracles, and supernatural stuff, you end up getting a new stuff. I know my words are sometimes not so great. You get a new form of matter. You have the world of matter as it came out of the world of materialism that was five senses defined and nothing magical. And when you add magic, when you add the inexplicable of purely energetic to the material, you get a new world. You have not been in the same world that you were in terms of materialism and predictability for the past 22 years. For the past 22 years, everything in this world, not only plants and animals on Earth, but cosmic architecture everywhere in reality, has been in an upgraded reality. So this is not merely bringing together your inside and your outside, because your inside can be full of pretty normal stuff, and then your outside is full of pretty normal stuff, and then we're just putting together, you know, two things of normal stuff that used to just be separated by a doorway. What we're really doing right now is redefining matter, redefining material existence by the activity of Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Matter begins to behave differently. We redefine what material existence is. We redefine what it is to be alive. I begin that with my existence and my particular body, but it doesn't just stay with me. It also radiates outward into any of the lives that I touch who also are choosing to do that or aligning with those possibilities of their own body and their own life experiences being non-predictable and supernatural, and now imbued with greater levels of possibility than would have been possible before. You're in a new reality. That's the best way I can say it. Since 2001, you're in a new reality. You're in a Flying Rainbow Lasagne reality where matter behaves differently, consciousness behaves differently, and there are new things available to you that would not have been available to you before. I have this imprinted on like a little aphorism inscribed on something. Matter plus energy, or matter plus spirit, equals Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Usually we have E equals MC squared. Energy equals mass. But what happens if we bring energy and mass together and bend that equation around together? Then what happens? What's on the other side of the equation to balance that out? Infinity. Like you are right now, and have been since 2001, you are in an infinity dimension. You're in an infinite dimension. But like many things, it takes practice to become a virtuoso or excellent at what you're doing. Like when you first get a violin, it's like, it sounds terrible. And it takes a lifetime of practice to be able to make lyrical, actual, beautiful music out of it. So it's been over 20 years that I've been here. And of course, I have been exploring and fine-tuning my expression of this new reality. But for many of you, like you haven't been doing this for 20 years, some of you might even only have started this week. So you must give yourself love and compassion that it takes time to figure out how to do this. Let me read my notes a little more and then go to the chat. What used to be the reality simply of the third dimension now has many other dimensions that overlay and imbue it with more meaning and more flexibility. That's big. More flexibility. So in the past, human objective materialism looks at something and says, jump on the cigar. Hey kid, it is what it is. It ain't gonna change. Like that floor ain't gonna sweep itself, right? Get a broom, do it. And also, like, this is the $5. Give me a potato, I'll give you $5 or 10 potatoes. That's because reality is not this supernatural and magical thing. And now what has happened is you have materialism and matter that is interactive with other levels of reality, creating greater possibilities of what can happen. And then maybe the floor might sweep itself, or maybe a wall might change, or matter might change in response to your thoughts and how you look at it. And all these dimensions that stack upon each other are all part of the same thing. So it's, again, going against this artificial bifurcation and partition that used to say, yep, matter and materialism stuff is over here, and it's not going to be influenced by this stuff, and that would be magic. If this could happen over here, that would be the definition of magic, like some inexplicable miracle. But now miracles will become the norm. Supernatural will just become natural. Or super. It will just become your daily existence, because more things are possible than would have been possible otherwise. And so when I talk about I died but I did not die, death is here defined as going over a threshold, or going on a journey, or transcending from where you are. Everything that I've experienced since the moment I've Flying Rainbow Lasagne has been a result of this melding or blending of realities. And there's no longer a distinct separated physical realm from the non-physical realm. Now there is a overlap and an influence of the two realms, the way that red and blue come together to create violet. I think you guys are getting it. The separation of the purely physical and materialistic realm from the spiritual or energetic was always artificial, especially in your body. And death is the ultimate separator. Death is the ultimate, like imagine a line going down your screen here. Here's your physical cellular body, and then here's everything that is thought and energy and consciousness. And when you die, zip, like we're chopping it down the middle, you leave behind your physical cellular body, and everything that is energetic about you is able to continue to move and transition and go, journey, and do stuff. But what is happening with Flying Rainbow Lasagne, now I'll hold Flying Rainbow Lasagne in the middle of the screen, is a bringing together. Your cellular body and your energy body are coming together. They're blending together, and there's not a way to separate them out. So the solutions to the past, where you're like, bad stuff is happening, I don't like it, my spirit's getting out of here, bye corpse, I'll see you later. Never. And your corpse dies and your spirit flies onward. That is not a solution anymore. Although I have to respect and recognize that some people are making that choice, which is my not rant, but just sharing that I was saying earlier in this presentation today, that some people are aligning with the possibilities of death. Some people are like, but my body either is old or in pain or somewhat out of shape or ugly. I'm going to die and get a new body. And some people are also intimidated by the sense of having to take responsibility and continuity of consciousness from everything that you've done. Because death, in many ways, is also a release from the identity of guilt. When you die, you're like, that was me in another life. I don't have to take on those burdens now. And it's true. You don't have to take on those burdens. And also, till death do you part, like relationships. Relationships end when you die. It's like the release that many people are looking for. So there's P.S. This is far afield, but I highly recommend this book that is called The Red Lion. That is originally, I think, from a Hungarian writer, but it's been translated, but it's kind of obscure. But it's basically about an alchemist who creates this gem of immortality, which is what this mythological alchemy is about, searching for the elixir of immortality. And this guy ends up being influenced by it, but he's so severely regretful because he did a huge crime. He hurt people very badly. And because he was immortal, he couldn't get rid of that crime. It weighed on him and on his shoulders, and he couldn't get away from it. As opposed to, you know, you're a crazy person, a psychopath, a madman, and you die, and you're like, ah, good, that life is over. On to the next life. Now I'll be born as a baby again, and now I can do something and not have to be a psychopath. And that's the facetious and lighthearted viewpoint of how some people feel like that death is a release from not only your responsibilities of life, but from your guilt and the things that you have done. And that there's this need for forgiveness, but not amnesia or denial or disassociation from the events and structures that you have been a part of and the things that you've chosen to do and things that might have hurt other people. So now, I'm not talking now about the true Christ consciousness or the true teacher that was there, but the way that those teachings and the life of Jesus, Yeshua, and the embodiment of Christ has been used culturally in this world is as a way for people to be able to transcend their guilt and have some way to move past their severe regret for the things that they have done. That they're like, I did all these bad things, but then I had a baptism and now I am different, and that allows me to still be alive, but be a different person than the person who took drugs or was a prostitute or didn't respect themselves in whatever way or hurt other people in whatever way. And they could say that was who they were before they were baptized, before they were in Christ, before they were saved, and that now everything is different for them. And that positive, negative, it is a thing. It is a thing that people are doing. I'm only mildly critical of it because it's a construct. It's a construct that is like not necessarily part of the perfect polygonal structure of your value system of life. And you got to be really, really strong on that, because you're going to get hit with a fire hose of energy and, looked at in complete detail. You're like, you did these bad things over here. Yes, but then I, had a baptism and now I'm a different person. Those things, aren't that way. You understand, like, you defending your life. You have to really be prepared to not defend, but to respond to the allegations that may be lodged to you about your behaviors. And I will also just very briefly allude to, I talked about the stuff I held up on that card last week, things that are mind invaders and body invaders. And or even if you are under the influence of molecules, but not according to your consent, all of these things kind of throw assessments out the window. If you're invaded by some kind of very, very tiny microscopic artifice that puts thoughts in your mind and tries to control your willpower, the things that you do while that stuff is in you, I would say is in a different category than just regular violence or idiocy or any of the things that people do that they want to die to escape from. So please understand, within these past 2 to 5 years, all bets are off. It's a completely different level of assessment for the things that you have and haven't done, and what you said and how you behaved while being inundated or while being implanted. How you behaved while you were implanted, that this is a very, very special and unique circumstance. So please comprehend that. But outside of this special and unique circumstance, I think it's essential to take responsibility for the things that you have and haven't done. So wait, I'm squinting and reading here. Thank you for my funny faces. Just thank you for forgiving me for funny faces. Okay, and so I am here for 20 plus years experiencing this melding of realities. But you guys are experiencing it too. And of course, when you are flying rainbow lasagneing and when you are transforming your own bodies, you are also becoming spirit matter. This whole entire world is becoming spirit matter. Okay, so, and in this world of blended realities, mundane reality plus super mundane reality, all are waking up to their own powerful inner co-creative imaginings and their inner Christ consciousness. Because Christ is your imagination and is your capacity to manifest the inside as the outside. Christ consciousness and Flying Rainbow Lasagne have a lot of parallels. This is a recapacitation back to this. You were always supposed to have this, and then things came along and they messed with your circuitry and made it so that you couldn't do it effectively. And this dance that you do brings you back to this. It brings you back to that innate potential that you were created and put into this world with to create the world. Isn't that amazing? The world was created, and then you were created and put into the world to create the world. This is another way of saying what I said 2 hours ago. Your chakras and pure consciousness and pure energy body and time body and light body exists and pre-exists your somatic cellular body. And then your somatic cellular body makes stuff happen in the world so that you continue to have a coherent light body. And wait, okay, so the mythology, more about Christ consciousness, the mythology of Christianity on earth does give us some idea of what ascension is. Talking about Christ consciousness as associated with the third eye and the indigo or the brow chakra and the higher faculties like telepathy and telekinesis of the non-physical anatomy. And if we don't take things too literally, there's a beautiful story that exists about a person who was an avatar or a container for the divine presence, who 2,000 years ago, who came to earth, was an otherworldly being, and inhabited a physical form specifically to be a servant to humanity and to act as an example of what happens when you activate your Christ chakra. Many stories or mythologies of the many healings and miracles that this teacher, Jesus Christ, aka Yeshua in Judea, was known to have performed, and that this can be taken non-literally as this is the story of what happens when a person becomes a full spectrum human. And the special things that he was able to perform, you will also be able to perform one day. That's part of the Christianity religion. All right, so as reality becomes mutable, as it becomes a matter world that responds to thoughts and consciousness and is non-arbitrary and has causality structure, unlike a dream, you will experience things like the healing of disease, instant manifestation of food like sustenance, and things like levitation or the seeming transcendence of the laws of physics. And each one of us becomes this living embodiment of Christ. And we need to connect to the source, which is also the destination, for guidance and nourishment about how to be the living Christ here. So you get your directives from your connection. This is so good. We are part of a grid or a network of many people connected together in this loving telepathic empowerment grid called Christ consciousness. And the story of what happened to Jesus, or aka Yeshua, how he died or was murdered, and how he arose, is the story of Ascension. The transcendence of death, whether the crucifixion is taken literally or looked at as an embodiment of a mythology. You can look at it and interpret it in all these different ways, which is a world mythology that goes back to Osiris in ancient Egypt. And also, I didn't speak enough about North American indigenous traditions, Daganowida and Iroquois, stories of others who have died and risen again. So you're in an allegory as Osiris, the mythological creature character, was exemplary of ancient Atlantis, and his dismemberment was the death of that culture. You are also experiencing something similar in an allegory of the diminishment of your own telepathy, the death, the torturous death of your own supernatural capacitations, and then the revivification, coming to life again, of those capacitations as you emerge into your true identity as an immortal. Now, I didn't even read everything that I wanted to read from my notes. I didn't find everything, but let me get to questions, because I really wanted to be present for the things that people will respond to. So Charlie B says, and thank you for being here, says, uninterested in the total destruction end of everything. With you. But don't want to give energy to an invalid system that does not merit continuance. Totally with you. How can one constructively withdraw all attention and creative energy from the unjust system when I want a new creation that bears little or no resemblance to the failed system? Totally with you there. And I think that you have articulated something that is why many people embrace the idea of the eschaton. Getting rid of the BS, getting rid of the stuff that is grotesquely distorted, and that we do not endorse, and that we do not want to continue to be in existence. So I use this all the time as my allegory. We want to renovate but not demolish. Reno, not demo. So I advocate for, like, if I had a house, instead of tearing down the whole entire house with a bulldozer and then living in a tent for 5 years while we kind of build everything from the ground up, to do a renovation where the structure and the structural integrity and the need for fixing and improving is assessed, and then we work on it portion by portion. So in withdrawing your creative energy and your consent or validation of reality structures, you can be like this. This would be demolition, would be like this. That's it. Everything is a pile of crap. I don't endorse any of this. I don't put any of my creative energy into reality, like not even having a reality. But then that means that you would also get rid of or not sustain and lose beautiful things like sunlight sparkling on ocean waves, beautiful butterflies, puppy kisses, good stuff that is worth staying in reality. So if I'm going to renovate my house, I might be like, you know something, this leaks, this is terrible, this floor is slanted, none of this stuff is good, but this room over here has things that I like, or there's some aspect of this that I like that I want to save and maintain. So in being a reality architect or a contributor to the structure of reality, conscious participant, the big takeaway, I know I've been talking for many hours here, big takeaway is conscious participant in being born and gestated and living, and conscious participant in how you generate the reality structure that sustains you here. This is the challenge that everyone is facing. because many of you have been experiencing unconsciousness, non-intentional births, or births and life circumstances that were heavily influenced by soul yoinkage and other things like that, and then how to become conscious and selective in the ideas and energy and reality structures that you endorse, that you embrace, and that you promote as being worthy and continuing to have existence. So my answer for you is that it takes actually a lot of virtuosity to do this, to be selective about the things that you endorse and sustain in reality. You say, these are the things that I agree with and that are good and that should keep on being in existence. And then the things that are unfulfilling, unjust, not in balance, or that lead to death or no longer eternal life, those are the things that need to go. And that is actually a lot more difficult. Like, you know something? It does not take a great deal of finesse to just get a bulldozer and just knock a house down to the ground, or whatever, a wrecking ball, smash it all down. You can do it in like 5 hours. But to be able to selectively renovate a reality structure requires an enormous amount of positive skill and effort, because you're like, well, you know something, I don't want to just take out all of these vertical supports of the building. The entire roof will fall down. I can only take out some of them. So let's talk about something like the economy. You know, money is a support structure that holds up your world. And if you just took away money, you would have the roof fall in. You'd have a lot of destruction. You'd live in a tent, and both literally and figuratively. You wouldn't have a reality to really inhabit. And so it's necessary to say, okay, if you want to renovate your economy, you're going to have to do it in a conscious and virtuous way, so that you still have the stuff that you need, and so that you don't have an enormous amount of suffering and additional injustice and additional violence, physical violence and soul violence. Meaning, what is soul violence? When you don't get to be the person who you're supposed to be. Soul violence is like when you're supposed to be an opera singer but you're scrubbing floors instead. That is violence to the soul. Your body might be fine, other than whatever, having soapy hands or back pain from scrubbing so much. Body's fine, but your soul is being violenced. Think about humanity. Humanity is meant to be having an elevated existence, where there are things like art, music, culture, personal growth, emotional introspection. And if you lived in a world with no money, that was like what people call like Mad Max, just a total survivalist fight for survival. Sorry, I used that word too many times. Just a totally violent and brutal fight for personal survival. You're not going to have a lot of great symphonies come out of that era. You're not going to have a lot of personal growth. You don't really have time for introspection while you are like polishing your crossbow or trying to, evade, running away from bandits. You're not going to be really doing those tasks, and that equates to soul violence, being on the wrong timeline. So really, the real answer to all of this, and how do you do effective renovations of society? The first thing is activating your insight, being able to see clearly, being able to see and know beyond verbalized language and beyond phonetic sound structures and beyond the hacked human operating system, to know what you need to do in each moment. And following those inner directives that are divine directives, that when you do that and when the rest of the people that surround you do that, that is how you rebuild. And you selectively withdraw your energy from things that are dysfunctional, I think is the best word, structures, and then redirect that energy into functional structures. And so that can be saying, I'm no longer going to put my belief system, my belief and my deep passion and my feelings and my wants and my desires into this stuff. I'm going to put it into this stuff over here. We have witnessed some amount of recalibration since the pandemic and since the past couple of years, of people de-investing or divesting themselves of their investment into certain social structures, and then instead redirecting your feelings. Like, what do you really believe in? And belief and what you believe in is the ultimate thing that is a treasure. That I'm not coming up with the right words. Your belief is a very, very valuable thing, that's as valuable as gold and diamonds. And where you spend or invest your belief is the real empowerment. So I've noticed over the past 20 years, a lot of people divesting themselves of their belief in government or in the necessity of some kind of government, something that is a larger overarching behavioral control system that used to be seen as positive or at least necessary to running the world, and many, many more people now having a real reassessment of whether or not they wish to invest their organic life force, chi, energy, creative energy, sexual energy, passion into government. And sometimes what this looks like is saying, like, I'm not really getting that fired up over these candidates. I actually kind of don't care about these candidates. I jokingly, I quote The Simpsons, I vomit in terror at these candidates, right? I refuse to participate in voting, and then I actively campaign against what is seen as a corrupt and invalid, not even real voting system, but harvesting of consent. Though I just gave you pretty much the continuum. I hope that it was clear what I was doing. Many people are now at that level where they're like, no, I do not validate these elections at all. This is a false harvesting of consent. I do not, that's the best, that phrase right there. That is part of how you look around the world. Who's that home organizer? She says, it does not give me joy. I look at this government and I assess it. It does not give me joy. I release it, send it off to the thrift store so that someone else may be able to benefit from it. But yes, I think that many, many people here, large swaths of the population, have decided that the government does not give them joy, and they're ready to release it and find something that fits a lot better. And so we have different outmoded systems that I do not consent to and that I withdraw my consent from. And of course, I have a driver's license and do my car registration, even though I withdraw my consent from this profoundly corrupt government and this, supposed elections that are really about manufacturing or harvesting of consent. I still pay my paperwork fees and make sure I have all of my, papers ready to be able to drive, even though I recognize that there's a vanguard, there's a forward-thinking group of people who don't do that, and they have done all of the research into the justification for not having license plates, not having a driver's license, going against their birth certificate, all that type of stuff. And my recognition flows to them, although I haven't done that. Because it's like this, everybody has to have their own particular diet. So like if you tend to be underweight, you're gonna you need to eat more like bacon and fat and butter. But if you tend to be overweight, then you need to eat like a salad with minimal salad dressing on it. Okay, so I'm Aurora and I don't even have a first name, and they haven't let me have a credit card just because I don't fit into the system and I don't have a first name. So I have been like trying to get these things and to be a part of the system so that I can be here and do stuff. But for many other people, they're like, no, I would like to divest myself. I would like to withdraw. I don't want to have that. I don't want to be a part of that system. So we're moving in opposite directions because I'm trying to be a part of your world so that I can do stuff in your world. And you're like, nope, I am trying to get out of this world because I don't like the stuff that's in this world. So I recognize and I applaud you. You do you, I do me, because this is how it has to be. And I could tell you so many funny stories about me, me trying to fit in with the world of paperwork and totally not fitting in and having so many difficulties, even at just having like having a driver's license and all those things that you need to have in order to function effectively in this world. I mean, because there is like this guy that lives in Oregon and he has a small cart that is pulled by a sheep and he drinks nothing but sheep milk and sort of lives off the land, like of mice and men who live off the land, Lenny. And he's doing that, but that's his path. It is appropriate for him, but that is not my path, because if I did that, I would certainly be sustaining my body here, but I would not be able to have a video to talk to you guys about this stuff. And I would not be able to paint a painting or make a dress that contains cosmic truth. You get it? So I have my path, and each one of you has your own path in terms of how much you endorse or participate in your extremely corrupt and dysfunctional human society. And then you have me, I'm here, but I'm not completely rejecting your human society. I am actually I'm trying to participate, and often like, it's just in the most comical way, like failing. Just like when I wore all denim and I thought like I'm really fitting in, and I wasn't fitting in at all, but I was really trying. So so many more things. Wait, you might even have an extra thing that you said down here about what I said. Okay, so wait, open to more questions or comments about what I just said. Let me move on to the next comment from Christina. And sorry, I have to squint and scroll. I have to squint and kind of like lean forward to be able to read these. How has the divine adapted itself to the human death and rebirth cycle paradigm? Awesome question. How has the divine adapted itself to this human death and rebirth cycle paradigm? Thinking about the clipboard, you know, your life review, right? And the guidance into the correct new life cycle. Is the invention of this death cycle diverting divine energy into assisting our spirits through this? Big yes. Let me read the rest of this, then I'll go through and respond. But yes, yes, yes. What great thinking you have here. And it almost can sound like a consent of sorts to this karmic washing machine by the higher forces, kind of another way of asking, why, God, why? I hope this makes sense. Totally makes sense. I love you. I'm hugging you through the screen because you're thinking in such excellent patterns. So the answer is yes. All consciousness is connected in a continuum, and we are all God, and we're all fractal fragments or parts of God. And so what is happening to one part of ourself is happening to the entirety of oneself, of self, and we are having to respond to it. So you as God have had to respond and do wild contortions and backbends in order to deal with the fact that death is a thing. Because you didn't invent death. You invented a system that had death as the peripheral possibility, but you didn't actually have to experience it. When death became experienced, and you had to create and respond is a good way of saying it. You had to respond to this stuff that was never supposed to happen. You're like, that I made this car, but I didn't make a car to have flat tires. Now I've got a flat tire. Now what am I going to do? Now I'm going to have to respond to the flat tire. So yeah, we were not intended to have to experience death, but death having become an experience, and not even something that's rare, but the normal experience here, has definitely meant that divine intelligence and self at the divine level has had to, let's say, like scramble to keep up, be like, okay, like what am I going to do in order to respond to this? And is the invention of this death cycle diverting divine energy into assisting our spirits through this? Yes. So there's actually huge imbalances at the level of ascended mastery, which is where you're talking about karma. So now let's also talk about karma, because there's karma, the pristine concept of causality, and you get what you deserve, which is proper, which is cosmic law. And then you have what is in this world where there are power abusers who have elevated themselves and call themselves the lords of karma, that they are doing the soul yoinkage. We're gonna hug Cheeky. That they are doing the misdirection of souls. Come here, girl. Come here. The misdirection of souls. People are supposed to, you know, if you do wrong, then experience the pain and the punishment, learn from it and grow, and then go in a more positive direction. And instead, you have these lords of karma giving somebody a free pass. Free pass. You may go directly to go and earn $200. You know what I mean? Like you may get out of jail free. Is what I'm trying to say. On the Monopoly board, they get the get out of jail free card, and they return and they get $200, and the rest of you get stuck in jail. Hugely out of balance. Hugely inappropriate, totally unacceptable. And the real insult that's happening here in this unfairness of the way that the power abusers who are manipulating cause and effect and karma, it makes the embodied experiencer question whether God even exists. When we experience this very distorted system of life, and death and unfairness. Many people who are highly intelligent, and I validate you, think maybe God doesn't even exist. Is God out to lunch? Does God exist? How can God let any of this stuff happen? The real insult, the soul violence that happens by being in such an unjust system is that you, the experiencer, start to think, well, where is God, and does God even exist, and how can God be letting this stuff happen? That is the worst thing that can possibly happen, because it's you, because you are God, and because you actually created a beautiful, perfect system that has been messed with and demolished and diminished, and then for you to consider, like, wonder about the existence of yourself. Like, do I, as God, even exist? Is there anybody up there? Is there anybody out there? That's the ultimate, is the ultimate in self-negation. Questioning the existence of your own self because you look around and you see how badly this place is being administrated. Right, hold on 1 minute. I'll give Cheeky one more bribe so that I can just do a few more questions. Hold on. Yeah, things that make you question the existence of God or the validity of God, that is some deep soul violence. So it's not bad enough that these self-proclaimed lords of karma are erroneously directing consciousness according to their whim about where who should live, who should die, and where you should go. All of that is technically God's job, but then it makes you as a soul being distorted on your journey, wonder where is God and how can any of this even be happening. And you know, it's on the one hand, you're building strong muscles because you're building the muscles of believing in divinity and aligning with divinity even when you are in a very, very unfair situation. But also, like, this world, it's not just a trust fall. You know what a trust fall is? That's when you're like, oh, I'm gonna lean back, someone's gonna catch me, I'm gonna lean back and see if someone's gonna catch me. I know the lighting is crazy right now. That's not actually what this is. That would be a huge risk. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine something that is so, what's even the word? Like, non-valuing of life and all consciousness everywhere, to risk it just on a trust fall. Because, you know, like, if you fall backwards, like, you're going to break your spine. If you fall backwards, if you fall in the wrong way, like, you're not going to have reality anymore. You're going to have nothing. You're going to have a big fat pile of nothing. So I have to walk Cheeky soon, but we have a few more minutes. But God would not be risking the entirety of consciousness and life and the fabric of the cosmos and existence just to see, like, how much do you trust God and how much can you learn to trust God and know that God exists even in very, very unfair situations. That's not what's going on. But what is happening is the fabric of space-time and consciousness is being stress tested. Like, stress tested to see, is this stuff going to stick together? Is it going to tear apart? Is this going, what is going to happen? Something's got to give. So yes, actually, my best answer to your excellent question and wonderment over here is that there's an enormous amount of energy that is having to be redirected, divine energy, towards the healing. The healing is not necessarily like, you know, you got a cut and then you have to fix that cut on your hand. It is the healing of the soul violence, the lack of comprehension of how these things can even happen. I want to give you a different view now of the afterlife. The afterlife as it is viewed as a place for soul healing. This is how it actually can and should be viewed. Not a place of judgment and assessment. Are you good? This is me, I'm being mean. Are you good enough to get into the afterlife? Like, kneel down, worm, you know, you're not good enough, and all these different things. All right, now wipe that away. Mental sorbet. Now here's a different afterlife. You've just died. And maybe it was something horrible. And maybe you, I mean, think about it. Soldiers who die in war, babies who are aborted, children who are raped to death, adults who are raped to death, any kind of, like, extremely traumatic and horrendous death, and you get to the afterlife, and instead of, like, kneel down, worm, you are a bad person in life, defend your life and tell me that you're good enough to get into heaven, here's what it is like instead. I am so sorry that that stuff happened to you. None of it was fair. You were not supposed to be raped to death, and none of this stuff should ever have happened to you. And that's the biggest healing that has to happen, because there is a total disconnect and a lack of comprehension. Like if we use as the example, like whatever, an innocent child who is being tortured and raped and killed, and they die, and they make it to the afterlife. The thing that would make that consciousness remain on the membrane of death and be unresolved as an unresolved pain issue is the lack of comprehension of that soul. Like, how could that even happen? How could that even happen? Those extremely torturous deaths lead to an unresolved echo of consciousness because the trauma is so severe, because there is a lack of comprehension. How can that have happened? How can that have happened to me? And the real healing of this energy that needs to be redirected is when a consciousness is treated in that way, and then it goes to the afterlife and really has to be healed, where they say to it literally, like, put your hands on your shoulders like this, I am so sorry. That should not have happened to you. So not only death is an aberration, because this is like, you live a good life, like sunshine and butterflies, then all of a sudden, kapow, you're dead. That is very, very different than what many people experience. Think about wars, ancient, modern, and ongoing. People and innocence and the things that they see and the things that they experience, and then actually going to the afterlife. And when you get past this idea of accusation, like if you're in the sense of these people are innocent and undeserving of these violences, and how do you explain that to them? If you're God, and these little, tortured consciousnesses come in front of you, how do you talk to them? How do you say, like, that was never supposed to happen to you? I'm so sorry that happened to you. That was never supposed to happen to you. That was the wrong thing that could possibly happen. And how do we fix you so that you can believe again in life and love and goodness and continue onward as a consciousness? Because no consciousness is disposable. You can't just throw it away. And clearly, when some people want death as an escape from their guilt, some people want death as an escape from their trauma. Because in life, they have been so severely traumatized that they literally can't even go on anymore. They want to be a new person to be transcending of that pain. What happens when you go through all of that pain and you reach the membrane of death? How do you transcend all of that pain? How does it get washed away? How does it get explained and contextualized and made okay? And in large part, the answer is it's not okay. And it will never be okay. And it was never meant to happen. And that is a very, very, a big, giant I'm sorry card from God to these, people that have been horribly murdered. And not just people, like whatever, animals that were kept in confinement and then, died horribly, things that were slaughtered and sacrificed. So many things that are aberrations. Stress testing the fabric of space, time, and consciousness. How much trauma can consciousness endure? And can you still have a world after those levels, profound, intense levels of trauma? And what level of healing is required in order to rectify that? So I want you to know there actually are giant, let's call it realms or departments in the afterlife that are just for healing people about this stuff. Not even people, like healing organisms and consciousnesses of the bad stuff they've been through. I watched these science documentaries, and there's this one that's about how they were experimenting with memory. Flatworms, they're called planaria, and they keep on like doing these weird things and experimenting with them. They chop off their heads, they chop them into 12 pieces, they chop them into 72 pieces because the planaria regenerate. And can you imagine being one of these flatworms that was horribly tortured and mutilated in science experiments? And then finally die, you make it to the afterlife, and you're talking with God or some higher form of your own consciousness. And what can be said? What can be said about your life? Like you were tortured and cut up into pieces and regenerated, and they made you have 2 heads, and then they made you have no heads, and then they made you have half a head, and the trauma is incredibly severe. And then how do you heal that or explain it or contextualize it. So like, yep, a human wanted to know what would happen if it cut your head up into 72 pieces, and that's why that happened. Like, almost unimaginable. So we're talking about an enormous amount of emotional energy that is distorted and out of place in the fabric of the cosmos that happens as a result of this, that needs to be fixed and healed and rectified and put back into place. Your question is an excellent question, because it comes from the stance and from the perspective of real compassion, like really, like cosmic levels of responsibility and compassion about what do you do and how do you respond to this. So thank you for that. Lisa, thank you for being here, and says, only want to be with those on the Ascension path, and so grateful for Flying Rainbow Lasagne. Anything to lift heavy feelings in the chest. Thank you. You're very welcome. And I'm also very, very pleased to be surrounded by everyone in this class and in different, groups and, people that I interact with and that listen to my work. So pleased to be connected with you. And that is a big part of this, that you don't have to do Ascension as a lone warrior. Clearly, like, you're on a marathon, you can't have someone else move your arms and legs for you. But when you're running, and especially when it's very, very grueling, the banter and the uplift between everyone is essential. And the recognition is essential. You're really doing something quite difficult, extraordinary, grueling, I already said, sometimes painful, and also the sense of exultation when you win, when you break the tape, when each one of you reaches that culmination and remembrance of God's self is amazing. And I'm a collective as Aurora, and the things that we have been together, we are so bonded. It's more than trauma bonding too. It is a reciprocal recognition and mutual respect and committedness to others, to self in disguise. It's not others, it's yourself, it's you traveling amidst yourself. I'm having difficulty finding words to articulate the levels of respect and profound commitment that are possible, that come out of these difficulties. Adam says, trying to connect some dots with our ancient past, quote unquote past, got it. The Mesopotamian artifact Bernese relief was originally red. Seems it may have been modeled after the Martian war beings. Very cool. I don't know Bernese relief, so I don't know the reference there. But yeah, there's tons of stuff in mythology and ancient history and different readings of human the human experience, like red and Chem and Kemet and Egypt that was originally red. The challenge is phonetic sound symbols that are hugely distorted, human salience that is hugely distorted, like mythology and oration that gets very distorted. So we just have to hold all of these very lightly, but there's definitely some connections and dots to be put together. But I'll just tell you this, in terms of your own insight, in your inner seeing, when you're connecting dots on the human level, you're kind of at this level, which is an okay level to be at. But just hold your conclusions lightly until you get up to this level, which is the level of empirical truth. It's mathematical truth when you know beyond knowing. But there are many, many cultural connections that are in all these various different ancient myths. It's fascinating to research. Pedro, thank you for being here, says, I notice they try to convince us that death is normal, that even gods die. But if we are about to hit the membrane of death, we have the FRL to avoid it and even ascend. Absolutely. So consciousness is eternal, and life is eternal, and gods definitely do not die. Although I will say this, and this is far off of my notes, but I'm going to tell you about this, guys. Humans look at God and humans look at the sun as something that is so big, so grand on its scale, that you think like, oh, that nothing can harm it. It must be like not able to be violated. It's inviolable and inevitable, and like it can't be vulnerable is what I'm trying to say. But the sun, stars, and God have vulnerabilities. And the fact that they continue to be in existence and be as strong as they are is the end result of supernatural miracles. So consciousness is a phenomenon. It's not something that you can take for granted and just be like, yeah, consciousness is everywhere. It's great. Who cares? You don't have to care for it or anything like that. It just keeps on being. And same thing with God. That God is this amazing miracle, and it is this inexplicable presence, and it is incredibly strong, but it has vulnerabilities. And what makes it eternal is that you continue to sustain it. Like, what makes a perpetual motion machine? You keep it going, keep it going. And the vulnerabilities are, I don't have a word for it. So yes, sun and stars in this realm of mortality can be destabilized and can die or have a mortality event. And also, what if you went to a star and you siphoned off all this energy from the star? Would the star still be alive? The answer is no. So don't siphon all this energy off of a star. So what if something comes along and wants to siphon a bunch of energy off of a star and make it die? Is that something allowed to happen? No, that thing is not allowed to happen. What are the things that could make a star die? What are the things that could make God die? What are the things that could make consciousness die? Big one. What are the things that could make time die? Time is an alive, metabolic animal. You and I are intimately connected with it and live within it. Is there a thing that can make time die? And the answer is yes. And then the subsequent answer is don't let that thing happen. The destabilization of your chakras is part of that thing that can make time die. And of course, the stuff that's trying to make time die and to destabilize it is like insane, because it would be like burning down your own house. But there are insane things, self-destructive things, but you can't let that insanity and self-destruction kill time or kill consciousness or kill God. These things, again, are so unbelievably precious that you can't risk them in a trust fail or in a stress test of the fabric of the universe. They're like, well, let's see if this is going to destroy everything. Well, let's throw in a few of these and see if this destroys everything. And let's throw in a few of these and see if this destroys everything. Totally unacceptable. But I will also tell you that when the cosmos fabric gets stress tested to certain limits, things happen. The cosmos augments itself by necessity. Flying Rainbow Lasagne is one of those things. That you get to a certain point where it's like, things are gonna rip, this is not gonna hold, this is not okay. And that's me, Aurora, in a higher dimension, witnessing this. And I'm like, somebody's gotta do something, because you can't keep going like this. And then that is my personal response. Flying Rainbow Lasagne, I invent this and I embody this as my response to the stress test of the fabric of the cosmos. So know on a deep level that when these stresses happen, something will always happen so that God doesn't die, so that time doesn't die, so that the cosmos doesn't die. But it doesn't mean you should risk it. Doesn't mean you should put a Fabergé egg in the middle of the road and see who's going to try to run it over, you know? Joyce, thank you for being here. Says, love you, appreciate you, and bless you. And Cheeky too, thank you for the blessings. Truly, thank you, Joyce. Love and hugs to you. And Cheeky's right here. She wants me to take her out for a walk. Aurelia is using the crying emoji. I can tell it's deeply affecting you. Says, where would you start with trauma healing? I know, it's big, 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 big stuff. Okay, what a great question. You know, the original trauma of what everyone is experiencing in this world right now is the invention of death in ancient Atlantis, and the genetic degradation that came as a result that took you away from your immortality. That is really the original trauma to heal. And it's deep stuff, and it's cultural stuff, and it's planetary stuff, and I would say it's too large of a burden for one person to put on their own shoulders. But that is primary injury that needs to be addressed. That all of these other things are outgrowths of. Literally, like government and money and the need to eat food are all outgrowths of that original primary trauma that needs to be healed and addressed. So there's not really a recipe for how to fix and heal trauma. It is different for each person and experiencer. Sometimes healing trauma can be a confrontation with the thing that did the violence to you, but sometimes it is the emancipation via capacitation. That, like, if someone hurt you, but now all of a sudden you learned karate and you can fight, and now you're never going to get hurt again because now you're a black belt. So part of what we're experiencing in our world in transcending all of this trauma is that we have learned and gained new skills and capacitations that it's not going to happen to you again. It's a completely different experience now because of the different things that you can do. And in Atlantis, you know, you had the fall, and the fall he was pushed into mortality, and the subsequent, you know, disempowerment that you've had for this mortal experience. So you think pole shift means catastrophe. Pole shift equal catastrophe. But in this present moment, you will experience a pole shift. But I tell everyone this over and over. It will be Flying Rainbow Lasagne. It will be that painting up there. Not north-south to south-north and crustal displacement. It will be a different type of pole shift. Inside to outside and outside to inside. So in that sense, the making you feel better is that it's not going to be a physical catastrophe. And when you work on your inner growth and then your inside becomes the outside, you're also working on fixing and healing the outer world. But also sometimes trauma healing can have a lot of, it can look differently for lots of different people. Trauma healing can involve sometimes purging. Like that's when people have to scream or they have to bang on tantrums, banging on things. It's a getting out. Sometimes you have to get stuff out because there's stuck energy. So sometimes there might have to be stuck energy getting out. Sometimes pilgrimages and cardio, when people do these long running and stuff like that, sometimes they are going through deep healing of traumas inside of them by going into the residues that are there. So I don't have just a simple answer for it. It's a very, very complex question, but it can be done, and it is happening. Christine says, wow, thank you so much, Aurora. You and your insight means so much to me. Much love. And Cheeky, so good of her to let us keep going. Thank you, Cheeky. Everyone's appreciating you. Cheeky's playing with her toy. Pedro says, love the lasagna. I've heard that people kill time watching TikTok. Oh my goodness. I'm laughing. You know what this is totally off topic, but you know what I think TikTok, I think it was named that because it was kind of a sense of a bullying or a muscle from China that they were saying, like, you only have so much, America, TikTok, the clock is ticking, you only have so much time at being a superior world power, and that isn't going to happen anymore. So I think that's what that is about. But I also think that there is something about the wasting of time by watching you know, these short video clips on the computer. And Aurelia says, that makes a lot of sense. From my response that I was saying to you, Pedro says, I have used Merkaba for physical protection and healing, but can it be used for mental and emotional trauma? Boom, boom! Awesome. Great thinking, and the answer is a big yes. So here's the template of what it would look like if you were using Merkaba for mental and emotional trauma. You can, if it is for you, like if you have a particular issue that you would like to be healed of. I always use like scary clowns as the example. It's not my trauma, it's others. You could put into your upward facing pyramid the desire to be healed of the scary clowns, the desire to sleep at night without having scary clowns in your nightmares, the desire to be able to walk through the world without being triggered and flinching because you see a scary clown, and to be able to you know, go into the bathroom without thinking that there's a scary clown in the shower. You have to pull back the shower curtain, make sure there's not a scary clown there. And then into the receptive pyramid of your Merkaba, you could put a receptivity to the healing of the origins of where this came from, for basically for you to have emotional resilience, emotional equilibrium, to be able to walk through your world feeling happy and safe and supported and joyful about what you will encounter. And then press run on that program and get these force fields spinning. And then that will cause inner changes and also events in reality. And those events in reality will be healing events. And that does not mean that all of a sudden like scary clowns will run to your front door and you'll have to be like, I'm not afraid of you. That is not what has to happen. It's different for everyone. Because when you're in the receptive mode of your downward facing pyramid, and it is chef's choice to the cosmos, you can be secure in the knowledge that God and the larger higher self, it really does know you better, or as equally as well as you know yourself, will send you the healing experiences. So let's do mental and emotional trauma for the trauma of Atlantis. Into the upward facing pyramid, I place healing the trauma of death, healing the grief of loss and separation of what it has happened since death has been invented, healing the guilt at having to eat other animals and causing even more death, and then into the receptive pyramid, being able to place, because it's often beyond what is beyond what you can imagine, being receptive to the feeling state of a world where you don't have to be afraid. Death and fear really go hand in hand to what it would be like to live in a world where you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid of someone killing you. This is why armies exist, because nation states are afraid that someone else is going to invade, or why home defense exists, shotguns and tasers and all of that. What would it be like not to have to be afraid? What would it be like not to have to be afraid of a lack, not having enough, because death and loss or poverty also go hand in hand. What would it be like to not have to be afraid of not having enough, to know that you always have enough? What would it be like to walk around in the world knowing that you're safe, knowing that you're loved, and knowing that you have everything that you need? And then press run on that program. And then you will literally experience the events of your reality as the healing for the things that you have been through. And once again, it does not mean that you will be presented with horrific nightmare scenarios again. You've already been through that. And this is you being presented with the healing, positive restructuring scenarios that make it possible for you to imagine a better life. I had a friend a long time ago who was in a car accident, and she got better from it, and then I was the driver, not in the car accident. Many years later, I was driving her someplace, and we were going onto the highway, and you kind of go around that curve to get on the highway, and we're going around the curve to get on the highway. She's white knuckling, she's like holding onto the dashboard, she's like bracing herself, because I think that was probably when they had their car wreck, like as teenagers. And I just realized it would take a lot of corrective experiences for her, that she would have to drive in the car safely many, many, many times in order for her to not be afraid that every time you go around the corner that the car is going to flip over and everyone's going to be ejected. All right? So for your entire human collective and earthly world, you have to go through the corrective experiences where you have safety and comfort, and you can expand, because fear is a contraction, and then to be able to expand, be like, I released, I expanded, and nothing bad happened. My shoulders relaxed and nothing bad happened. And then I did this for like 5 years and nothing bad happened for like 5 years. And at a certain point you recalibrate into that. So corrective experience is very, very huge. The corrective experience in The Karate Kid was he learned karate and then he could fight back against the bully. The corrective experience for my friend in driving her in the car was she drove to the grocery store and was not in a rollover, was fine. And then corrective experience for humanity, pole shift, and you don't fall into a state that is divinely disconnected and even worse. To get it? And also right now, oh good, that's my cue. We have to walk cheeky, and my treadmill just stopped. Facing virtual reality, facing the peril of an invasion by a couple of letters, one of which is shaped like this and one of which is shaped like this, putting the implantations into one's body with the intention of making you guys not fall but be pushed into an even deeper, darker inception. But that doesn't have to happen this time. You're like, no, we got incepted into a crappy world of mortality and insane pathology one time. One is enough. And this time you get the corrective experience. The Karate Kid fights back effectively. You have been through all of these accretions of light and soul wisdom, not so that you can simply repeat the traumas and injustices that brought you to this moment, but so that you can heal and rectify and not only get back to who you were before these traumas happened, but plus. So you will not just get back into the same old footprints of like, well, that was a crazy dream, and now I'm back in Atlantis and everything is just as it was. Nope. You will be plus, meaning like you got even more from this experience. Thank you, Aurelia. She says, this is so good, Aurora. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for that encouragement. And says, wow, so I wonder if a repeat trauma happening was actually supposed to have the potential to be a corrective experience to show it wasn't as bad. Sometimes it's that way. Like if my friend was in a car accident, it was just a fender bender, I'd be like, okay, I was really afraid, but no one really got any broken bones and we're okay now. But hopefully it doesn't have to be that way. Hopefully you get the corrective experience is a sense of empowerment, that you're like, oh, look at that. Like, everything went completely differently because I made it go completely differently. And that's the thing that takes away fear. It says, I had a trauma happen twice, once in 2012 and once in 2020. Aurelia, I truly am praying for you, sending good energy to you, to be able, good wishes to you, to be able to transcend the things that you've been through. And I recognize and validate that. And, thank you for your authenticity in sharing that with us here. Says, thanks so much. You're very welcome. And Adam says, as always, thank you so much. I'm hopping off. Thank you. I think it is time for me to hop off too, because Chiki's been very patient and accommodating. We're going to take her outside. Aurelia, this is such a good conversation. You're very welcome. And I'm pleased that we were able to talk about this. And I will tell you, so from the death of this body and my experience of walking in, that was a hugely traumatic event for me. And there were many years when I just blocked it out and I totally didn't think about it, even though it was at the foundation of all things lasagna. I didn't think about it, didn't talk about it, and it took a long time for me to be able to even look at it, even with a little bit of distance, and there were many things that I couldn't articulate about it. And what was healing for me, and just take this lightly, and if anyone can apply it to their own lives, eventually, because I couldn't really talk about it, write about it, journal about it, I couldn't get it out in that way. But at a certain point, after I got good at playing the piano, I could play a song about it, and that's what the song Grave Blessings is about. And I was able to express something that had been held inside of me for a long time through the music, because I couldn't say it with words, but I could say it in that way. And that was the beginning of me being able to be free in this body and in this life, and not be carrying around like a dark burden of bad stuff that had happened to me. Because I also now can really celebrate Flying Rainbow Lasagne is a miracle and something really, really positive and amazing that came out of literally the darkest, worst thing that could happen to a person. And that I would encourage everyone to be able to do something similar. Like with trauma, I found for me it heals in the expression, and there's an integration into my artistic being. If there's a way that you can express it even beyond words, that might be, through music, through dance, through art, through some creativity, or through some activity that is really important. And also I found a way to contextualize and make meaningful the trauma and the subsequent traumas that I've been through. If it's just something bad happens, like someone punches you in the face and mashes your face in, that's just very unsatisfying. But if something happens and there's a wrongness, you kind of need to know, like, why did that happen? How can I make sense of this? How can I turn it into something that is worthwhile? And many people, I think, struggle to do this when they've had violence and sexual violence and familial violence. How can I even make sense of this? And that's like the soul that gets to the other side and just has God be like, I am so sorry, because that none of that stuff should ever have happened to you. It is your own personal journey to make meaning out of something that was traumatic or torturous. And I think each one of us will have to do that for the things you experienced as individuals and as a collective, including these past 2 years. These past 2 years of the implantation of these artificial, mind control structures have been so traumatic and so just very, very difficult to get through. We will, as individuals and a collective, need to imbue this with meaning, and hopefully that will be able to be done, like through this process. You win, you triumph, and through this process, you are able to contextualize what you've been through and see why it happened. Pedro says, love the lasagna. Pedro says, love the teacher and the rectifiers. Love received, Pedro. Thank you for loving our whole group. Thank you for being here. And I will wrap it up, and I will say thank you. Thank you to everybody who watches. Thank you to the people who are able to be here live for the recording. I recognize not everybody can take that time in their schedule. Thank you to the people that catch the archive. Thank you to the people that email me with questions and also comments on YouTube. Have the most respectful and most wonderful conversations and comments on YouTube. I feel very positively blessed for that, because it's just 100%, positive and worthwhile interactions there. So thank you so much, everyone. Let me sign off for right now so I can go take care of Cheeky. Positive blessings. Thank you so much. And we are not at the end of the semester, but we're heading there. So soon we're going to do lesson 18. I'll make it a long marathon. I'll make it a standalone that anybody can tune into from any level of being informed. That's about lesson 18 is the galactic history. Then we'll have a wrap up. Then we'll start the semester again, but that will be 2024. Okay. Just giving you the little roadmap for the future. Thank you, everyone.